Hello, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, to people coming in from all over the world. My name is Dr. Regina Pia Robertson, and I am the founder and the president of New Dimensions Global. New Dimensions Global Mental Health Leadership Summit. And I'm welcoming you to our second annual celebration of World Mental Health Day. It gives me great pleasure to welcome each of you here today on the platform, to all of our First Ladies that are streaming in from across the continent of Africa, Your Excellencies. We acknowledge and we welcome you here today. To the members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, special invitees, fellow presenters, and the general public. I'd like to say to you, thank you for taking the time to support us, to acknowledge the work that we're doing, and to support us for the endeavors that we were given to accomplish for the creator of each and every one of us around the world today. But most importantly, I would like to give thanks again to the creator, the visionary, the one who asked, would I do this? And I said, yes, I will. So I want you to know today that New Dimensions is not the product of Dr. S. Regina Pia Robertson. It is God's project that he has given to be done on his behalf. The New Dimensions Global, our vision is a world where good mental health and wellness becomes a normative component of the everyday life for every life. A normal component of everyday life for every life. Our mission, in order to accomplish this vision, our mission is to secure mental equity for everyone, everywhere, through kingdom-mandated policies and leadership collaboration. That is what our mission is today. So we're here to make a point. We're here to let it be known that mental health is the overarching reach. It is the pivotal point. It is the foundation to everything that we do. And we recognize that the World Health Organization has given today as a day where everyone would take the time to recognize that mental health matters in the global community. Every day, mental health matters in the global community. So our theme for today, for this summit, is a kingdom approach to mental equity through policy analysis and good governance. So our speakers today, each one will share in terms of their experiences, their understanding, what they are doing, how it matters. They would give us a call to action. They would also give us a strategy and recommendations of what we can do throughout the globe, wherever we are positioned, how we can help to make mental equity a component, a daily, an important component in the lives of everyone. So, as I said before, I want to thank you for coming on, but I thank most importantly the creator and the visionary of this forum, which is our Lord and Savior. Our Lord and Savior. So, without any further ado, I want to hand over to the moderator, Dr. Sheila Williams. Dr. Sheila Williams is a PhD professional. She is a mental health advocate. She is what they call the voice in the mental health community. She advocates for those who really don't have the voice to speak on behalf of themselves. She advocates for the prison population in terms of the policies that are out there that are being used right now that are not, that are failed policies. They're not working. But she advocates for them and their families who are in the community, their children who are in the community struggling and really don't know where to turn. Dr. Sheila is an education specialist, and who better to advocate on behalf of those who don't have a voice, but the voice herself. So it's an honor to have her here today, wanting to be on this platform with us. Having said yes to the call, it's an honor for me to hand over to Dr. Sheila D. Williams, our moderator for today. Dr. Sheila, thank you.
And thank you so much, Dr. Regina. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here. So I send greetings to each and every last one of you, wherever you are around the globe. Thank you so much for being with us today. You are in for a treat. If you don't already have a notepad, I want to encourage you to get a notepad so that you can take notes, because each and every one of our panelists will give you nuggets of information that you should be able to take away from this summit and utilize for your everyday life. As you go out, you think of yourself. I encourage you to think of yourself as a change agent when it comes to mental health and what you can do to contribute to equality when it comes to mental health services for every individual, including yourself, around the world. So without further ado, I will go ahead and start to introduce our panelists one by one. Our first speaker for today is Dr. Jared Akama Anyari. He is an ambassador, a chaplain professor. Dr. Jared Anyari is from Kenya. He is an international chaplain of NVM, the president of Africa Peace Foundation and Peace Society of Kenya. Professor Dr. Jared is the recipient of several degrees, an MBA majoring in project management, an MA in development studies majoring in peace building and conflict transformation, and a PhD in professorship from UGCSI, just to name a few. Dr. Jared is a certified professional mediator and environmental impact assessment lead expert. He is the chairman of the board of trustees at the Jacobs Abbey Global Institute for Leadership Studies, USA, and the country ambassador of International Human Rights Peace Commission, Kenya. I present to you Dr. Anyari. Okay, it looks like we have a change in our speaker, so I do apologize for that. Let me introduce to you Dr. Liverpool. Dr. Alicia Liverpool is from St. Martin. Dr. Liverpool is a faith leader who is devoted to the spiritual success of people and the social progress of nations. As a visionary in this sphere for more than 20 years, her reputation as an esteemed spiritual leader and humanitarian has been firmly established. Given the significance of her role as an ambassador, Dr. Alicia launched the LEAD Reform Initiative. LEAD is an acronym for Leadership, Equipping Ambassadorship, and Diplomacy. This initiative is a Christ Standard, specialized program for aspiring and practicing ambassadors to fully represent the kind and interests of his kingdom. Dr. Alicia Liverpool.
Good morning, everyone. Greetings from St. Martin to Dr. Regina Robertson and your team and your staff, and to the distinguished panelists that will be sharing today. Good day. And we thank God for this opportunity that He has afforded all of us. I am Dr. Alicia Liverpool. I am a native of Trinidad and Tobago. I'm now a citizen of St. Martin, which is a constituent country in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. My ambassadorship for Christ takes precedence in all that I do, and I am also a peace ambassador with the Institute for Economics and Peace. In my role as an ambassador, given the significance of ambassadorship, I am all about the proper representation of Christ and his government in this earth. And today I'll be speaking from another initiative, governmental, which is bringing hope and improvement to humanity in terms of changing the way we think about people, changing the way we think about peace, and changing the way we think about progress in this world. I'm delighted to be here and to have this opportunity to share on the importance of governing the mental. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Liverpool. We will move on to our next panelist. As you can see, you are in for a treat today. Our next panelist, I believe, is just one moment. Okay, our next panelist I do apologize for the technical difficulty. Okay, so our next panelist is Julia Makapiya, the African Wonder Woman. Dr. Julia Makapiya, our speaker for Global Leadership Mental Health Summit, is from Kenya, but now resides in London. A highly sought after social scientist trained in social policy and health, and speaker at the UN and other prominent platforms. She's a politician, lived in London Regional Executive Diversity Lead, and founder of Block Lib Dem UK Africa Diaspora Forum, North London Kenya Group. I present to you Juliet Makapiya.
And greetings, everybody. I just want to allow my spirit here tonight and in the morning, whichever part of the world you're watching us from, and appreciate every single person over here, from Mama Queen, Dr. S. Regina, from you, moderator, Dr. Sheila D. Williams, and every single person I'm here with in the platform, Dr. Sonia Elliott, Dr. Alicia Jobiti, Dr. Dana Kamoshe, and Dr. Jason Rainfield, Dr. Susan Coney, Blair Brown, Maria Baga Mazibani, Dr. Sam Abue, and of course the New Dimension Global Platform. I'm absolutely excited to be celebrating World Mental Health Day here today. And I love to start off with your mental health currency matters, which Mama Queen puts in her in her Facebook and everywhere. I'm just feeling the love here today. And I am Julia Makapiya, the African Wonder Woman. I'm yet to really study hard and become a doctor. So I'm absolutely excited to be amongst world leaders, change makers. And of course, I'm here because Dr. Jared and Professor Jared Akama from Kenya has introduced me to this platform of Dr. Sheila Regina. I want to just celebrate the love and just to introduce myself again. I'm the African Wonder Woman. I'm also within the LIBTEM. I wear so many hats. I'm a community transformational trainer, London Regional Executive Diversity Lead here right down in London. I'm the founder of Black LIBTEMs. I'm also the founder of the UK Africa Diaspora Forum, North London Kenyan Communities. I'm a social scientist by background. I'm a social impactor, philanthropist, model, presenter, and I'm always found at JNM 1000 talk shows. But I want to say this, abundance is what brings us to the gratitude, and this program allows us to really celebrate and harness what is being brought forward. And I just picked up a kingdom approach to mentor equity through policy and governance. What a beautiful way to start us off with. And I'm looking to presenting later on. I submit, quickly, also let me appreciate other people who have helped African Wonder Woman, especially in my slides here today, Dr. Ian Hopkinson, and all the volunteers that help African Wonder Woman, Reverend George Agui, I acknowledge him as well, Dr. Matsanga, all the way in Kenya, all the volunteers who've been busy tweeting and busy helping us behind the scenes. And I'm feeling absolutely excited, Dr. Joseph Nyachama, and every single one of us. And of course, to all our families and friends around the world. Back to you, moderator. Thank you.
And thank you so much. Thank you so much for that amazing speech. We are going to have so much more in store for you. I greatly appreciate you for bearing with us today. Our next panelist is Dr. Susan Coney. Dr. Susan Coney is an ambassador of peace and reconciliation from Kenya, East Africa. Ambassador Coney was appointed as president of the Women's Federation for World Peace, Kenya chapter, and as the international vice president, Women's Federation for World Peace, the WFWP, Africa, and is presently coordinating all of the WFWP chapters and their projects in Africa. She also spearheads women empowerment and development training programs in Kenya, Cote d'Ivoire, and Zambia. Dr. Susan Coney, I present to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Williams, and thank you so much, Dr. Robertson, for this very, very important event that we are now just about to present, our developments or even our speeches on about mental health, which is really so important, and something which we cannot do without. this is the very first time that I'm presenting this kind of paper with the Kingdom Approach. And I'm very, very delighted also because I'm sure that we are going to learn more about it with all the different the presenters. And I'm very delighted for your new dimension global initiative, which is really something which is bringing us together and also giving us a new approach on the best way in which we can truly be able to realize certain goals, especially the SDGs, and work together with the governments and all the stakeholders to make a better world for everyone. So I'm really looking forward, and thank you so much for this invitation.
Thank you, Dr. Coney. I appreciate that. We will move forward. And as you can see, as I stated before, we have an amazing group of panelists that are speaking today. Our next presenter will be Dr. Jared. Dr. Jared. I presented his bio just a minute ago, but we have Dr. Jared that is coming on next. We have Dr. Jared Akama Anyari. He's an ambassador, chaplain, professor. Dr. Jared Akama Anyari is from Kenya. He is the international chaplain of NVM, the president of Africa Peace Foundation and Peace Society of Kenya. Professor Dr. Jared is a recipient of several degrees, an MBA majoring in project management, and MA in development studies, majoring in peace building and conflict transformation, and a PhD in professorship from UGCSI, just to name a few. Dr. Jared is a certified professional mediator and environmental impact assessment lead expert, chairman of the board of trustees at the Jacobs Abbey Global Institute for Leadership Studies, USA, and the country ambassador of International Human Rights Peace Commission, Kenya. I present to you Dr. Jared Akama Anyari.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila, for that elaborate introduction. It's nice to be in this forum because there's no doubt that mental health is becoming an issue and it's a problem. And it's nice during this World Health Mental Day that we have a focus from a Kingdom Approach. And it is going to be very interesting how you are going to hear the presenters presenting from the Kingdom Approach. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anyari. We will continue. We have another amazing guest speaker for you today. This is Maria Mbanga Mazi Mavi, born in Zimbabwe, lives in Alberta, Canada. Maria Mavi, our speaker for the Global Leadership Mental Health Summit 2021. She is a women's and girls child empowerment advocate, community builder, leader, philanthropist, and motivational speaker. She is the founder of Women and Girls Arise Zimbabwe Trust, Canada Women and Girls Arise Foundation, Hope for Her Global, and an upcoming writer. She has a podcast called Sisters Talk, Up Close and Personal with Maria, where she interviews women from around the globe who advocate for women and girls issues varying from education, law, justice, and women's advancement. This Alberta Black Gold Philanthropist of the Year is Zimbabwean born. I present to you Maria Mbanga Mazi Mavi.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. And I know my last names are a mouthful, but you did well. It is Mbanga Mazi Mavi, but you can call me Maria. And you pretty much preempted who Maria is in a nutshell, because I am one person who says accolades for me are not something that I like to dwell on, but they are just icing on the cake. When I look at women's issues, being an African woman, those are issues that are very near and dear to me. When I see where we are centuries later, yet we profess in the beginning that when we were all created, we were created equal. Before God's eyes, we are born equal. And we are then later entrusted in what I like to loosely describe as the custodians of the systems that they've put in place. We all need systems to guide us, and which we all refer to as the patriarchal systems. Most of us come from those. But in these very systems, the protectors and the custodians of the patriarchy are actually allowing the unfairness and the injustice and the inequality to women and girls. So it makes me then wonder if the SDG 5 that I again chose today to be the subject in question, it says they're looking at equality, gender equality, and I leave with the pause. How equal are women and girls in this society where we profess those in power are our brothers, our fathers, our uncles? Why then do they continue to allow the injustice, the inequality to prevail? Yet they are born of woman. So that's how I would like to introduce myself to you. A true advocate for women and girl empowerment, sustainable empowerment, practical empowerment. And we will learn more and find out who Maria is and what the work I have done, which carries me across continents. I call it a gift, because when we travel far and wide, who would have thought an African girl would end up in North America? But you do not take away the African woman in me. This is why most of our work, my work, together with the organization team, we work more in the continent of Africa, where our presence are now in South Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and we are hoping that in the next 5 years, we'll also tap into West Africa. Lest I stand to correct, Africa is a continent and not a country. We are 57 countries in Africa. So without further ado, and I'll not dwell on the introduction of who Maria is, but give you a taste of what is to come. Thank you. And I feel honored to be here to not only learn from all these amazing experts, but to share our experience as change makers, coming from the lenses of places we have been, and see how we can all develop towards a solution approach. Thank you for having me on this platform.
Thank you so much, Maria. I really appreciate you correcting me on your name. I do apologize, but we are happy that you are here to bring forth so much amazing information, valuable information from not only you, but all of the panelists. I will go ahead and introduce our next speaker. We have Ambassador Dr. Sam Abue. Dr. Sam Abue, Ambassador Dr. Sam Abue is from Nigeria. Dr. Sam is a world-renowned statesman for Youth Matters to ICN USA. As the African Civility Educator of the Year 2021, he received an honorary doctorate of philosophy and humanities from the United Graduate College and Seminary International, USA, for his work with youth and civility in many countries. He is the founder of Stay Alive Civility Global Initiative, YPN Publishing, and Media Africa's leading publishing company, and the CEO of ICLA, a leadership training program. Through his founding of Stay Alive Civility Global Summit, he has successfully co-authored several books with a cadre of experienced speakers who are leaders in their respective fields. His recent initiative, Stay Alive Volume 3, has reached bestseller status on the international platform. I present to you Ambassador Dr. Sam Abue.
Wow, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much. I feel so humbled. And I'd like to say a big and huge shout out to Dr. Sheila Robinson. I'm so honored and I feel so blessed to be here today. First and foremost, I think I am the national statement for youth to ICN USA, I Change Nations. And basically, it is my responsibility to see every young people, the teens and adolescents, stays alive in this post-pandemic era. Now, there is a suicide pandemic that is raging all across the world. And what are we doing about it? If we look at what we did, if we look at the action that was put in place to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, let's look at it. The United Nations says that in every 40 seconds, someone somewhere is committing suicide or having a suicidal ideation. So it means the total figure based on the statistic by the United Nations says that we have lose a lot of young people. We have over 800,000 people died to the pandemic of suicide. So there is a serious pandemic of suicide, depression, and anxiety raging all across the world. So what are you doing and what am I doing? So I am here today to share with you some of the amazing things that I have been doing behind the scene and the ones that I've been doing around all the whole continents of the world. And I feel so humbled that Stay Alive Civility is one of the greatest initiatives in Africa that is helping the young people, the teens and young adults stay alive in these crucial times. We understand that a lot is happening all across the world right now. A lot of young people don't know how to navigate through tough times and life-shattering events all across. Now, based on the UN Sustainable Development Goals, I have come with a call to action to help young people. And some of these amazing grand strategies is what I'll be sharing with you today that will help you stay alive purposefully in this post-pandemic era. So I'd like you to get your pen. If you're watching right now, I'd like you to also share this so that someone somewhere can be part of today's global summit. So first and foremost, let me say this to you. If you're watching right now, please just put in the comments, stay alive, stay alive. There is so much reason why we all need to stay alive in this time, because this time is full of so many events that I would say that a lot of young people are not prepared for this. And how can we stand tall in the midst of post-pandemic era? How can we stand tall in this new paradigm? How can we stand tall in the midst of the chaos that is surrounded by the whole world? So what can we do? What can the young adolescents, what can we do? These are some of the things that I'll be sharing with you. Now, let's take a look at some of the life experiences that we have gone through in life. Life itself is full of seasons. We have the winter season, we have the rainy season, and the dry season. Remember, after the sunshine comes the rain, and after the rain comes the sunshine. So it means that you have to prepare your mindset to stand tall when trials, when challenges, when storm comes. So for the young adolescent that is watching right now, I want to tell you that I would like to share with you some of the amazing tips that will help you to stay alive in the midst of life-shattering events. Now, there is this book I released in September 2020, titled Stay Alive, Rich Mind, Empty Grave. What does it take for you to stay alive? What does it take for you to shut the doors to the grave? Now, these are some of the amazing things that I'll be sharing with you. First, you need to have the mindset of gratitude. You need to appreciate what you have already. You need to appreciate how you've passed through the stages of life to where you are right now. So you need to learn how to be appreciative. You have to learn to stay in a course where you appreciate what you're going through right now. Now, if I take a look at how I started, I will realize that my life has been so full of greatness. When I said greatness, it wasn't rosy when I started, but now it feels good that I am living a purposeful life. But those times behind me, how were I able to overcome some of these life-changing events that occur during the stages of life? So these are some of the things I would like you to flash back to. I'd like to flash back to some of the days where things were rosy for you. Now, I understand it's tough because all across the world, I know what the young people are going through right now, because I speak with a lot of young people all across the world, and I know that young people are not prepared for this sudden pandemic. And how can we all stay alive in this crucial time? Now, gratitude. You have to be grateful for what you have. Now, the gift of life is what you have. Yes, the gift of life. For as much as there is breath in you, then there is life. So where there is hope, there is life. So you have to know that there is so much hope in the midst of hopelessness. And how can you find this hope in the midst of hopelessness? So you have to learn to know that life itself is a precious gift, and you have to preciously guide it. And how can you guide these precious gifts of life? How can you stay abundant? How can you do all this and still stay alive purposefully? Now, when you have been able to identify the trails of gratitude in you, then that's going to shift you from where you are right now to another stage. And the stage that you are going to move on to right now is the stage of mindset. So you have to equip your mindset to stand tall in the midst of chaos of life. Now, life itself is full of ups and downs. When you live a purposeful life, you will end up being appreciative of that life that you're living. So for every young adolescent that is watching me right now, and the youth all across the globe, I want you to take notes of these trails and essentials that I'm about to share with you. Staying alive purposefully. What are some of these things that you need to stay alive purposefully? What are the life skills? I call it life skills because they are skills that will help you, that will also help someone around you too. So I have been able to come up with Stay Alive Civility Gatekeeper Training. It's a training that equips you with the mindset that will prepare you and that will prepare someone around you to stay alive in the midst of this post-pandemic era. Now, life skills 1. You have to know that all that you see on social media are not true. Not everything. I'm saying that everything that you see on social media, they are not what it truly is. They are not how it seems to look. Now, I took a picture that I posted on my Facebook page, on my social page. Now, do you know that it took me over 10 pictures to get that one perfect picture that appears on my page? But you don't know that. You only saw one amazing picture and you're like, wow, Sam. Now I'm telling you that it took me over 10 pictures to get that one perfect picture. So it means that what you see on social media. So I don't want you to start comparing yourself with other people. I don't want you to compare yourself with your childhood friends. Now, though they are doing well, you feel that you are behind. But believe me, he who laughs last laughs best. My life is an example, because when my colleagues were doing pretty good 15 years ago, it seems as if life is unfair to me. It seems. But now, life is absolutely amazing, because everything is working for my good now, because I chose to stay alive in the midst of my trials. And one other thing I would like to share with you is civility leadership skills must be inclusive to provide sustainable lifestyles for young people all across the world. We have to ensure that every youth have access to informations that will help them during tough times in life. And one of it is this global summit that you're watching right now. So I would like to say that if you're watching me right now, please kindly drop stay alive. Drop stay alive right now as you're watching. Thank you as you do so, because it is so important that we all stays alive in this post-pandemic era. One other tip I'm going to share with you today is that power of words. What are you speaking? What is that word that you are affirming to? What is that affirmation? What is that word that you're declaring over your life? So I speak daily to myself that I'm rising, I'm shining, and you see me rising every day, because there is so much power in my tongue. So I wanted to replace self-hate with self-love. So when you look at yourself, say the amazing things that you want to see. Say the amazing thing, amazing thing that you want to see in your life. Because when you speak, let's take a look at creation. Everything that you see, the trees, the sun, was created by the power of words. So what words are you speaking right now? What are you really saying? What are you declaring over your nation? What are you declaring over the world? Now, if you look at last year, when the whole world was shut down during the pandemic, now people started prophesying goodness. People say, I'm healed, and a lot of people were healed. So you have to declare what you want to see. I remember I was traveling from Nairobi to Nigeria, and that was when the whole world was on standstill. In fact, my flight was the last flight that was checking out of Nairobi as at March 23rd, 2020. Now, while we're in the plane, a lot of people were very conscious, all these safety precautions, because there is already a lot of safety precautions. You have to wear your nose mask, you have to do this, you have to ensure that you sanitize your hand and all that. Now, this is one of the first tips that the world put in place as precautive measure to curb the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, let's take a look at it. While I was in the plane, a lot was happening. A lot of people were very scared, but I was so excited because I know that I am absolutely gifted. I believe that I am absolutely amazing because I have to put all this precaution in place, and I have to believe that nothing will happen to me because I believe. Now here I am. So you have to believe that life itself is full of abundance, and to tap into this abundance, you have to prophesy it, you have to speak it, you have to affirm it. So declare a word and it shall be established. So what are you declaring? So from today onward, I want you to start declaring the amazing thing you want to see, the amazing life, the abundant life that you want to see in your nation. Declare it now. And one other thing I'd like to say is that there is a place for stillness in life. It's okay that you are not okay. Yes, a lot of people go through a state of mental stress. Yes, everyone does. So you have to know that what is happening to me happens to other people. So what affects me, it's affecting every other person. But do you know that every other person has been able to channel their mindset to stand tall in the midst of that challenges. So I wanted to prepare your mindset that in life, tough times will come. And when tough times comes, what do? I understand, because when the whole world was facing the pandemic, you can imagine the whole world was shut down, right? That is a stage of revamping. Is a stage whereby you have to re-strategize. You have to calm down and look at, what do I do? So it's okay that you're not okay at this moment. Right now, as you're watching me, I understand it's okay. Know that it's okay that you're not okay. But what do you do while you're not okay? These are what I am sharing with you now. You have to understand that you are not alone. Someone around you is always there to listen to you. You have to know this, that when you know that someone somewhere around you is ready to listen, then you open up. This is the stage where you open up to someone that is closer to you. Imagine when the world was shut down. Imagine if nothing was happening. If you turn your TV, you'll see that a lot of news were going on by the United States of America, Europe, Africa. A lot of continents were trying to come up with innovative ideas and all that, how to see the end to the COVID. Now look at what is happening. We are walking through COVID pandemic victoriously, and that is what is happening all across the world. So that issue that you're facing right now, that life-shattering event that you're going through right now, that process of tough times, that process of storms that you're going through right now, it's a matter of time. You will come out of it victoriously if you choose to stay alive now. So the best time for you and young people, teens and adults, to stay alive purposefully all across the world is now, because there is so much that is ahead of you. You have to remember that the future is calling. So what do you do to stand tall when trials, when storms hit you badly? How? What do you do? You have to learn to believe that though the storm may come, but joy comes in the morning. After the rain comes the sunshine, and after the sunshine comes the rain. So no matter how you are seeing the challenges of life right now, believe me, you're coming out of it victoriously. And I'm so honored that you are part of today's Global Summit. Now, if you know someone somewhere that is actually going through tough times right now, please, I'd like you to be kind to them. This is the civility approach to staying alive. Remember, you can't give what you don't have. You can only give out of the abundance that you have. So it means if you want to love someone, you have to give the love from the abundance of love that you have. So it means that civility for all is the slogan for the now. You have to be civil to everyone around you. You know, a smile can help your neighbor to stay alive. You don't know what people are going through. You see everybody outside, everybody is trying to ensure that people don't know what they're going through. But you know, with your kindness, with your good act of kindness, you can take someone out of a depressive mood. So learn to be civil, civility approach to staying alive in this post-pandemic era. So I want to say that a lot of young people that are watching right now, I want to say this to you, that learn to always be the voice for the voiceless. Learn to always listen to what someone somewhere is going through. People can speak at times, but study them, study their reaction, study their action. If someone has been so lively, someone that is so lively that every day you see the person at your workplace, you see someone at school, you see your colleague at school, you see your colleague, your neighbor in your community, you see them that every day they are always happy, they're always excited, but suddenly you see them that they are cold. What do? These are some of the tips that I'll be sharing with you all at the Stay Alive Civility Gatekeeper training. It's a training that will help you to know how to help other people when they are going through life-shattering events. So I am so grateful that the growth of a society is largely dependent on its leadership. So to ensure progress, leadership skills also require a level of dynamicity to allow system to propagate. So how do we take equity with leadership and together with mental wellness and helping young people to stay alive? How do we make this together? Because everything around us falls on leadership. Yes, everything that surrounds us, everything that is happening all across the world, in your country, where you're watching me from right now, it's based on leadership. When you look at the statistic of people, young people dying to suicide, they are of high increase in the continent of Africa. Why? Because of bad leadership. Now, if the leadership is in a good state, it means that every other people will enjoy the benefits of that leadership trails and essentials. So it is very important that we look into leadership. And I believe this will help you if you can stay connected with me and with every other speaker that is speaking today. We will continue to help you and see that you stay alive in this crucial time. And one more thing that I would like to share with you about stay alive. It is so, people trained in leadership, people trained in some of the skills that we help them to stay alive, to level up in their field of study. I have taught some of the signs of suicide crisis and how questions persuade and refer people to help. How can you actually refer other people who are going through a depressive times, who are actually going through a time where life has become so tough for them? How do you recommend them? How do you spot them? How do you get to know that someone is going through tough times? Now, when you see people in a state of stillness, I mean a state of lockdown for so long, you should know that something is wrong. So you should be able to speak up and help them. Now, if you want to help someone that is going through suicidal ideation, that is going through depression, the first thing you need to do, first and foremost, that is required of you is empathy, ability for you to listen, ability for you to put yourself in their shoes. So it doesn't mean that they are going through tough times and you have to approach them as if you are perfect. No, you have to first of all put yourself in their shoes. Now understand them. Assume that you are the one going through what they are going through. So that will help you to know the choice of words to use. That will help you to know what to tell them and what not to say, because you'll be referring your thoughts back to yourself. Now, if someone somehow, there is an incident that happened in Nigeria. A young lady, she had carryover over 5 courses that she had to carry to the next year. Now, when you look at it, everyone wants to come up with a flying colors, right? Yes. But do you know that sometimes you might not come out with flying colors at school, but you will end up being the number 1 in your field? Yes, it's possible. Do you know that this lady, after she saw her results, she felt so bad. And she was like, she could not withstand it. She was indoor. That is the state of stillness. You will see people withdrawing from people. When you spot this, know that such person needs help. And the best way you can help them is to put yourself in their shoes. And this will help you and every other person around you to stay alive. And I am so excited. Thank you so much, Dr. Sheila, Dr. Williams. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Abue, for your amazing presentation. We will continue with our panelists, our presenters. We have next Dr. Dana Kamuch. Dr. Dana Carmouche, Apostle Dr. Dana Carmouche is an accomplished educational consultant, leadership development coach, keynote speaker, and author with more than 20 years of experience. As the founder of Dana Carmouche Enterprises, she partners with leaders and individual contributors to support life-affirming leadership and organizational transformation. As a thought leader and strategic thinker, Dr. Dana is passionate about inspiring people at all levels to optimize their full potential while maintaining a commitment to shifting obsolete paradigms one person at a time. I present to you Dr. Dana.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Dr. Sheila. Greetings to all of the panelists that are joining, to all of my thought leaders that are here and present wherever you are listening in from, watching this particular broadcast. I bid you greetings from the United States. I wanted to just come up and kind of share who I am really quickly and get out of the way so that we can move through the process or the flow of And I thank each month that we're in. So we know this is Mental Health Month. And when I began to have the conversation with Dr. Regina about what this could look like, I'm passionate about mental health for a lot of reasons. And the dynamics where there are intersection of not just the health of a person, but the health of a community, the health of a nation. And so there is a lot of overlap when we talk about SDGs and where education and equity for gender equality and where no poverty and all of these seemingly cross-pollinate, if you will, to bring forth what I consider to be a healthy well-being of humanity as a whole. And so I'm looking forward. Dr. Sheila, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes, it appears that your internet may have gone out just a little bit, Dr. Dana.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We can hear you now.
Okay, my apologies. I don't know what this internet is doing. So the devil is a liar today, y'all. That is not going to be the intent. So any technical difficulties that are going on, my apologies again. I don't know, because it happened before and I was like, okay, what are you trying to do? You don't want to give my voice. Don't let the enemy silence you in this season. Let's be a voice for the voiceless. Let's make sure that we lend our measure and our metron to this conversation. That's very critical, I think, because we are at a critical mass stage relative to health, not just of an individual, but of humanity as a community, as a nation. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Dana. I appreciate that. We will move on to our next panelist. That is Apostle Dr. Sonia B. Elliott from the USA. Dr. Sonia Elliott is an ordained apostle with a PhD in Christian counseling, AES psychology, and a doctorate of divinity. A pioneer CEO founder of EGLI Counseling and Coaching, Ingalls Wings Global Incorporated, Avoda Kingdom University, and Sonia Elliott Global Ministries. She is a dynamic speaker, educator, and counselor who has worked in the field for over 40 years. She is an author and a trailblazer with a passion for leadership and development. I present to you Apostle Dr. Sonia B. Elliott.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sheila, for that introduction. And also I'd like to thank Apostle Dr. Robertson for inviting me to this and to be a part of this occasion. Moving forward, I would really like to stress mental health is really a passion of my heart. I had worked in the field in different areas for many years as a nurse, And one of the things that I've seen is that the young, the old, the rich, the poor, all seem to experience a pain that there is no prejudice. And when we bring it into the kingdom of God and try to get the understanding of what mental health really is, it's always been a taboo where it's been put on the shelf, but put under the carpet because of the fear that seems to embrace others and not allowing them to look holistically at what mental health really is. Mental health is a part of the system, and without a mind, where you could be healthy physically, but you still need your mind to help you to live your daily life. And so this is something that is very important, that I really believe that the pandemic has really brought forth, opening up our eyes to see what this really is. And the body of Christ really embraces mental health unknowingly, because everyone that comes in has some portion of mental adjustment that they have to do. And the reason for coming in the first place is because there was something that was out of sync with their system that they came in. And so you find that when in this season, we're hearing a lot about mental health, but there still needs to be a clarity, knowing that the mind is important. The mind is very important for the whole system in the government. And when we look at the SDGs, we're looking at poverty. Poverty, if your mind is not sound, poverty is there in your mind and in your physical man. So we look where mental health is really you have to look at the holistic part of this, look in entirety, and knowing that everyone experiences some form of deficiency in their mental capacity somewhere along the line. And so this is something that should be included in every part of life, every system, in the 7 mountains of influence. This is something what I believe should be brought to an awareness where there can be more clarity and not look at it as a taboo. This is something that's very important, and I'm really encouraged today in seeing the different entities that is getting involved in this, and for people to become aware. Awareness is the key. When we're not aware, we walk in ignorance, and ignorance does not get us anywhere. So this awareness is very evident now through the pandemic. You see so many things happening. And so I'm really encouraged today in what Dr. Shirley is doing. And I really embrace this, and just know that I'm very passionate about this, and that there is more that I would like to share further. I thank you for allowing me to be in this occasion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sonia. We are going to move on to Dr. Jared. Dr. Jared Akama Anyari. I introduced him earlier. Dr. Jared Akama Anyari, ambassador, chaplain, professor from Kenya, will now do his presentation. Thank you, Dr. Jared. Dr. Jared, I believe your microphone is on mute.
I'm saying thank you so much, Dr. Sheila, for introducing me and giving me an opportunity to say something on this important topic. Remember, we are looking at the kingdom approach to mental equity through policy analysis and good governance in an equal world system. Let me just start by saying we should ask ourselves who we are. And I want to go briefly to Genesis chapter 1 and realize when God did his creation, when he was finishing every other day, he was saying that everything he created was good. When you read chapter 1 verse 26, 27, 28, you realize who you are. You are created in the image of God and his likeness. Therefore, meaning that we are supposed to take the character of God. The next step when he did, he created us to be dominion, to rule his creation, the fish, the birds of the air, and even to take nature. In the nutshell, what I'm trying to say, that we were created to be stewards. And when we look at sustainable development and connect it with what God wanted us to be and how he wanted us to carry ourselves, sustainable development is using today's resources without compromising the future generation from using the same resources. So God being the author and finisher of our faith, you can see God was the author of development. And how do I look at development? I look at development as peace. I look at development as happiness. And development, I can define it as a process of improving the quality of the life of the people. Let me just connect it now. Sustainable development from goal number 1, end poverty and end with global partnership. And what we are trying to do tonight, this morning, afternoon, from wherever you are in the world, we are trying to forge a partnership. Hear this, and sustainable development goals are interconnected. Remember, God created us as in his image, and everything that God created was good. Then why have we decided to destroy the world? Where have we decided to come with sustainable development goal from goal number 1? And we are today celebrating World Mentor Day, World Third Mentor Day. Meaning what? If we do not have good health, we cannot fight poverty, we cannot address anger, we cannot be able to look at education, we cannot talk about gender equality, we cannot talk about climate change, we cannot be able to talk responsible consumption and production, we cannot talk about life below water and above water. Remember, we were created to be rulers. We were created to be dominion. Therefore, my listeners, when we do this, we must be able to have good governance. And the good governance, this is a process and institution that produces research that meets the needs of the society. Is that not development, sustainable development? While making the best use of the resources at their disposal. Nobody has stopped us. Our grandparents, our forefathers, they used the same resources which they have handed unto us, the pattern, and that's what we'll do to the next generation. And I always say, nothing about us to be discussed without us. We must be on the policy table. When we were coming up with this, in this millennium, from 2000, we came up with Millennium Development Goals. There were 18 number. Did we achieve them? No. We have come with another ambitious one for 2015-2030, sustainable development. Are we going to achieve? But if we are going to do this, we are going to make it. So good mental health also facilitates that people perform a key roles with families, with communities, with service, whether taking care of the children or older people, or contributing to their community economic recovery. Meaning without good health, there is no way we can even imagine of implementing even one of sustainable development goals. So good health is very key. And I'm saying the mental health and the well-being of our whole society have been severely impacted by this crisis, particularly in this period of COVID-19. And in fact, if I use my country as a case study, Kenya, between May and July, more than 375 people committed suicide. And for people to commit suicide, as Dr. Sam was representing, it has to do with something with the mental. People are so much stressed, people are so much depressed, and nobody seems to come up with something to caution them. As I proceed to wind up, let me just say, what does equity mean in the Bible? Equity means justice. Equity means fairness. Equity means being upright. There is a clearly an overlap in this concept, and the modern usage can point out to iniquity and iniquity. And that's why we said in an equal world that we cannot be able to share the resources. Here, let me just shock you. The first world, that's the West and Europe and China. The first case of COVID-19 was detected in December 2019. It has spread to the countries, both the rich and the poor. And I want to use in Africa. The West have been able to fascinate their people. Europe have done the same. And when this COVID-19 came, it was everyone for himself and God for us all. There is no way we can take the world forward. There is no way we can talk about development if we are not going to be civil to each other, if we are not going to have civility for all, if we are not going to care for one another. So social equity is talking about fairness. We have to be fair about each other, and we have to be equal on the table. What does God require of us? In Jeremiah 29, verse 11, it says, God has got good plans for us. That is to prosper and not to harm you, or to plans to give you hope and the future. What does Mark 12, verse 31 says? It says, love your neighbor as yourself. The imperative word here is being as yourself. If we love our neighbors, you love ourselves. This is the golden rule. We need not to do things which harm the other person. Let us not live as if we are the generation which is going to live for the and we wind up the world. There are generations which are going to come before us, and that's why we spend much time to talk about sustainable development. So the scripture tells us the fall of man. Sin led to the total being deprived, the relations with God, and it brought death. So our physical and mental bodies are attacked by disease. Mental illness is part of living in a foreign world. Treatment of mental illness involves the whole person. The whole person, that's why we talk about holistic education. When we talk about the education, it's the one which addresses the mind, the soul, and the body. And we need to read the scriptures on the mental health so that we can be able to comfort one another. As I submit, let me just have this to say. If we have to take this word forward, if we have to implement sustainable development, we must be one another's keeper. We must practice the golden rule. We must ask our government. Like if I talk about Africa, about their budget declaration, which they said 15% of our budget should go towards health. How many governments have implemented that one in the continent of Africa? It is simply they do not allow people to sit around the table. I like talking about participatory development in the sense that we need to involve people. We need to inform people. We need to consult people. We need to reach a consensus to move forward as a people. And one of the clear and core of sustainable development was, let us not leave anyone behind. The world is breeding. The mental health is an issue. Let us come forward and put it where it belongs. We are not going to sit down as the world is suffering, as our governments are not being responsible. And the COVID-19 has actually given the character and the nature of man. How I pray that, as I conclude with Psalms 139, verse 14, that we are fearfully made, that we shall give God the glory and give him the praise. Let us go back to Genesis and know that everything that God created was good. We are created in the image of God. Let us have the character of God so that we take this world forward by caring for one another, by showing love, by having compassion. I submit.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jared. We appreciate your presentation and your knowledge and expertise that you have shared with us today. We will move on with our next presenter. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Jared. Our next presenter, I have already read her bio. It is Dr. Alicia Liverpool, Ambassador Dr. Alicia Liverpool from St. Martin. I present to you, Dr. Liverpool.
Thank you again, Dr. Sheila Williams, for the introduction. To Dr. Regina, as I lovingly address her, Pierre Robertson. We thank God for you and your team for bringing together such a diverse and influential network of leading global voices, developmental experts, and all peoples on the front lines of mental health. This is a global leadership mental health summit, and by definition, summits refer to official meetings among heads of state and governing authorities. Historically, summit conferences were convened to herald the end of a period of conflict and to lay the foundations for the future order. If we take a look at the 1919 Paris Peace Conference, it was summoned to settle the First World War, and it was imagined at that time to design a future and a formula for enduring peace. Today, this summit that has been convened 10-10-21 is designed and designated to do just that. When we talk about a summit, we are talking about an official meeting of governmental heads of state and governing authorities. We are heralding the end of injustice and unrighteousness, and we are laying the foundation towards an equitable and sustainable, peaceful society. So I thank Dr. Regina for this opportunity. I'll take my approach, a twofold approach to mental health equity and policy analysis, and to culminate with good governance. The world has witnessed enormous social and economic development in recent decades. That cannot be denied. But yet, the economic and social imbalances are present in virtually every society of the world. Then we have upon us right now a pandemic, which only amplified the persistent problems of injustice, of unrighteousness, and other imbalances. I'm thankful that Dr. Shirley, Dr. Regina, she has purposely defined and aligned this conference from a kingdom approach, an approach that acknowledges that we were created by God and that He should have a say in the progress of this world. When I look at the diminishing role of the church, and we can acknowledge that the church has suffered a diminishing role in recent decades. But for this summit, seeing that we're taking a kingdom approach, I'd like to include the church as the church that Christ promised to build, the church according to Christ, His representative body, His governing body, His governing authority in the earth. The church is the representative of the kingdom, the government of the kingdom of heaven on earth. And if we take a kingdom approach to peace and justice, the Bible tells us in Job chapter 34, verse 17. Now, I reckon that the Bible is the constitutive instrument of the kingdom of heaven. It sets for us our rights and our obligations as members. When we read from the Constitution, this constitutive instrument, it tells us in Job chapter 34, verse 17, should one who hates justice govern? And my foundation, or my support and my partnership for the SDGs is goal number 16: peace, justice, and strong institutions. I'm an advocate and a pioneer of the governing church, the church according to Christ. And this is the missing ingredient. We have not included, there has not been an inclusion of this church in seeing the peace, sustainable peace, and righteousness and justice in the world. It asks the question, should one who hates justice govern? Dr. Shirley made a post recently quoted by Margaret Chan. Social deprivation is not a matter of fate. It is a matter of policy failure. But how can we have policies of good governance and justice from unjust leaders? This is an approach that we have not championed. This is an approach that we have neglected. We have abrogated and we have abdicated from our position of ruling. Dr. Jared Akama Anyari just made mention of that. We were created to be rulers. We were created to have dominion. We were created to do justice and righteousness. And so, should one who hates justice govern? So this is the first approach. We need to be selective in the persons that we elect, the persons that we appoint. These are the questions that we have to ask ourselves if we want to see the peace and the justice and the mental equity and all the imbalances that the world that is virtually present in all sectors of society. If we are going to take an intersectoral approach, as Dr. Shirley has propagated, an intersectoral, then we must include the governing authority of the kingdom of heaven on earth. And I say this because should one who hates justice govern? If we want to see justice, then people who love justice should be elected. People who love justice and righteousness should be appointed. It goes on to tell us a governing deficit extends beyond policies. I am a believer for external policies, but I also believe in the twofold approach of faith and works, because what is born of God is what overcomes the world. And then we accompany our faith with corresponding action of works. So we combine the two. If we want it to be sustained, it is the protocol of the kingdom of heaven. This is a world that God created. He is the manufacturer, he is the creator, and he knows what is best. And so he said to us, faith and works must be combined if we want to see it sustained, if we want to see a lasting social impact, if we want to leave a world that is better for generations. And so I am here and I announce today that governing deficits extend beyond policies to include the heart of the ruler. I allude to what I just said. Should one who hates justice govern? Because the heart of a ruler brings the difference that we need to see. The heart of a ruler or a leader will always have direct influence on the governability and the capacity for good governance. So if we are after lasting peace, as SDG number 16 proposes, if we want the peace to be lasting, if we want the justice to be lasting, then the ruler, this is where the church, I believe, we have to be strong advocates for, and even to take our positions of authority, because government is a God idea. Government is God's plan for the common good of humanity. And if earthly governments propose to do this apart from God, then it will not be lasting. So this is approach number one. Should one who hates justice govern? This is a question. We are taking a kingdom approach. We should ask ourselves this question. So the governability and the good governance, the ruler has a direct influence. The type of ruler has a direct influence on peace and justice. The injustices and equalities persist because sustained peace and justice is a collective effort. Each part must do its share. And this brings me to agenda number 2, point number 2. Governmental, meaning we govern the mental of our minds. We have to change the way we think about persons, the way we think about peace. We cannot abdicate our responsibility to external and assign power only to governments. It begins with us. Peace is inherent. And if peace is going to be sustained, it must begin within. So my initiative, Govern the Mental or Governmental, simply advocates, it's a peace building, capacity building, that we are talking about you, that you can be transformed by the renewing of your mind, taking responsibility to govern your thoughts, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are kind. The Bible tells us that a spiritually minded person is life and peace, but to be carnally minded is death. And so if we cast down the imaginations and cast down the arguments, and we take thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ, we govern the mental part of our being. I believe that we can improve the well-being of humanity, and we can be agents of grace, and we can be conduits of peace, and we can be rulers of justice and righteousness for a better people, for a better world, an equitable and peaceful world. I thank you, Dr. Sheila. I turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Dr. Alicia Liverpool, for your presentation. And again, for all of those who are tuned in, I hope that you are taking down notes, because as Dr. Liverpool and all of our speakers are presenting, they are presenting you with valuable information that you can take forth and hopefully evoke change from where you are. Next, I will be presenting to you Julia Makapiya, the African Wonder Woman. I have already read her bio, so I will present to you Juliet.
Good morning and good afternoon and good evening from whichever part of the world that you're joining me from. And I'll go straight to the point because today I just want to look at, first of all, the solutions that we've already had about the approach here, which is a kingdom approach to mental equity through policy and governance. I'm going to start off by introducing myself, and much appreciate to, once again, I know he wasn't here, Professor Jared earlier on, who invited me to this platform, and I have met Dr. Sheila Regina Mama Queen, and I just appreciate, and I feel blessed, as I said earlier on, to be amongst great change makers, great transformers around the world, great social impactors around the world. And why is this session really, really a Global Leadership Mental Health Summit 2021? Happy Mental Health World Day today is something that I want to share around the world, and thank you to World Mental Health Day 2021. Let's also, if we have not tweeted, I just love to put up hashtag of Mental Health World Day as I start, and also put up Dr. Sheila's, Regina's favorite hashtag line right now, which is hashtag your mental health currency. And I love that. As soon as I saw that, it struck me. Let me put that again. The hashtag is hashtag your mental health currency. And that is what led me to feeling the spirit of starting off by saying, building successful solutions. Let me appreciate Dr. Ian Hopkinson for helping me to do my lovely, beautiful slide, and my overview for helping to bring the UN solutions. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of what I enjoy doing and giving you solutions, hopefully in the next 10 to 12 minutes. And so my names, as you heard earlier on, I love to say African Wonder Woman standing for love, and love strikes us around the whole world. So I would like to start off with the little projects that I set up in Kenya. And one of the things that I set up was diversity in Kenyan communities. And underneath, I put volunteers to look after the diversity in Kenyan communities. Within that, I noticed that the volunteers were so passionate. And what is diversity in Kenyan community, first of all? I want to share a little story behind that and how that came into being, because when I met and spoke to Mama Queen, I just felt my love, and we spoke for just like almost over an hour, 2 hours, because I couldn't stop talking, and talking heals the mind, as I always say. So diversity in Kenyan community was inspired to me because when I came into United Kingdom, and I was actually in the university when I got this kind of inspirational sort of like question. I was actually a student, and my background, as I said, is in social sciences. And I was in class, and one of the teachers said, for you to, learning is actually making sure that you have gone out there and you've implemented something. And so this thing used to bug me, you know, that learning is, you know, when you've learned something, you have to implement something. But I had a desire in myself where I felt that I wanted to transform the world. That was what the voice would tell me in behind my background. So the teacher kept saying, you know, one of the teachers, like, you know, and as a social science student, you can imagine, you're just inspired because, you know, I come from a school of thought, which is all constantly finding solutions. I love to describe myself as a problem solver. I love the greatest challenges around the world, as I said, and I spoke to Mama Queen, and I believe that is why Professor Jared Akama allowed me to meet Mama Queen here today. So our teacher keeps going on in class and saying, you've got to solve something. And so I thought, I posed the question. I can't remember exactly when, but I'd say maybe around 2002, 2003, come all the way to 2009 while I'm graduating. And so I set a question. Why is Africa always having aid? That is what my desire wanted to investigate. Could it be something that was really causing us to really not really flourish as the rest of the world? So I was inspired by this little rationale behind my back of my memory somewhere. And I really wanted to understand, how could we transform the world? So that is what's brought in so much of the discovery that people see around the world that I'm doing, community development at the heart, not just in Kenya, and from my identity all the way to United Kingdom. So I started off with 17 children where I wanted to really understand what could be the key of really what we were saying. My kind of desire and yearn, which I've told this story to Professor Jared, I just wanted to understand, could it be something? Could it be corruption? Could it be governance? Could it be, what could it really be? Could it be depression? We see all kinds. But in my mind, I knew that in all these reasons that we give, these reasons are experienced everywhere because I'm traveled. So I was really looking forward to seeing what could help us to really transform the world so we have a better world to live in. So I grew up in Njoro in Kenya. I moved to Britain as a student. And the teacher, as I said to you earlier on, kept telling us, learning is what you do with what you study. So what I so much, I told you about why so much aid has gone to Africa. My mother's background is in entrepreneur, I must mention her, and my father's background as well is in lecturing, and my mother as well. And my mother ran a business, which is Matatu, and she enjoys community spirit. So I was also inspired by her. So I set up my little project, and at that time, I was just setting up because I felt that I wanted the guardians of the children. So you've got to understand, I had a rationale in my head that where we live in Njoro, people will tell you, so one side is like a little bit like the slums and another side is really well off. So as a little girl, I grew up seeing the social inequality between both sides. And I was always wondering what is also wrong. So I didn't just start championing issues of social inequality when I'm here in United Kingdom, but as a little girl, I saw those opportunities because I knew there was something more that was needed around the world. So as I set up this project, I could feel that there was need. So my rationale was, I'm going to go in and I will create an education program for all these guardians. And that was what my head was telling me at that time, because I wanted the young people not to grow up in those conditions that I saw. I was soon going to discover something, I tell you. And you remember I said to you earlier on, I went in with an open mind because I was a student at that time. So Mama Queen just told me to tell you this story here as well, just as it happened. And I share that to the world here today. So one thing led to another. And the next thing that happened is I became more curious and more curious because I began to see some of the cultural changes and things. You've got to remember, I live in United Kingdom. So I'm even experiencing the touch of the people of United Kingdom. In other words, I was experiencing what white people actually see towards the Black nations or Africans and Caribbean nations. And I wanted to really see that kind of indulgence and that kind of sort of like transformational, and what was the key things that were actually missing. So within my program, obviously I had no funds. It was time that was experienced by the volunteers, some of the best volunteers around the world. And I feel that I want to mention some of them and the team. Emily Wanjiro, Paul Njoroge Paul, Mwangi, and many others, Winnie, many others. Can I celebrate all the volunteers around the world? So just a quick one, because I can see time is going. So when I was doing that, I set up a project which was for children who did not go to school. But then I soon discovered that that was not how it was going to work, because the guardian soon told me, we can't go to school if our children haven't gone to school. So that is what the guardians were telling me. Hey, so I ended up with 2 programs, not just one, but 2. From a project that I had started with 17 kids, we ended up with 81 children. And those 81 children, we ended up with the guardians, of course, and the children who the guardians wanted to go to school because they felt that their children had to be in school before they could go to school. And that is how we ended up with those 2 programs. Now you try and explain that to a normal English working class person here in the United Kingdom. And they're going to tell you, what? I am not taking that. So me being who I am, and I'm thinking to myself, actually, that's the way it is. So the programs have to change so that you can get results. Can I champion right now to United Nations that we need to be flexible in our minds and create those kind of solutions so that we are able to meet the target needs of the real communities, that we are able to create community change makers and transform that. I will quickly run out and just, because I think I've run out of time, I created another program, just one program. I've got 54 programs that every time I met a volunteer wanted to do something with me. So there was some kind of inclusion and interchanging patterns and ways that I feel the rest of the world needs to know. The volleyball pitch, I was telling Dr. Ian the other day how it came about, and he says to me, what's the one thing you could do to change mental health work? And I say to him, I created a volleyball pitch for young people who were drinking, and I wanted them to play. And he just laughed. He said, I could never think of that because I'm asking you about mental health, but you've got to understand that I had to work with the people on the ground, and we saw a need of mental health and how that impacts the young people. And so solutions is with games. My brother passed away with drinking alcohol issues. So I saw the need of seeing how my parents, especially my mother, who you cannot say that my brother was not educated. My brother had a master's. And in fact, my brother who follows me for that matter, had a master's here in United Kingdom. But you've got to understand, in my town center, many children who were at the background of even professors and whatever during that time were having and suffering from alcohol related diseases. So that's what really inspired me to create a games program, because I felt at the time that if these children, as I saw my brother's siblings, could just come out with a little bit of energy in those parts of the world, counseling skills and other medications is not really affordable. So sometimes what you find is you need something even more. So I thought, mix that with the police front in my town there. And so the little funds that I had, I put it out there. And I was very blessed again, and I met the right kind of people. And every time I spoke, somebody came in and helped, and I translated efficiently or effectiveness into what really was happening on the ground. So the volleyball team was really for people who were really drinking, and then that translated into them talking with the police officers in the town. And also that kept the security issues under, because sometimes they would end up in petty crimes and stuff like that. I'll finish off by saying to you, here in United Kingdom, policy-wise, I love championing issues to do with Black Lives Matter. And through what we've set up as a Black Lives Action Committee, I want to praise everybody in that group. We have created what we call politics and Black representations in Britain. That is from 2020 to present, and just pushing it. And we have an organizing committee, we have leadership program, and this is a group in the political party to promote the interests of Black people in Britain. And it grew from the Black Lives Matter protest and what Black people are experiencing here in the United Kingdom, institutional systemic racism, and of course, even in the United States, you can see that. I want love around the world, and that really inspires me. Our key success there is policy document, regular meetings, and of course, pushing out all the things. Finally, our solutions here, I want problems. I want problems and people to identify by knowing all your communities, because by knowing your communities very well, you are able to pick up on something that you can. Solutions that work come from the community. Find out what people are best at. If we're going to work with the UN, it's sometimes about us, yes, but actually it's also understanding what is happening on the ground. Because I've just given you a great example of that. Always talking to your community, always being talkative about what you care most. Mental health SDG goals number 3 is something that I love to talk about. And because today is Mental Health World Day, that is good health and well-being. My biggest passion as well, which is really what I care about, is the most difficult one. I always like to say, partnership for the goals. And partnership for the goals strikes me because it brings all these SDG goals together. But the other one that I really celebrate is the zero hunger, because I believe when people are hungry, children can't go to school, people get upset, people get miserable. So number 2 really strike me as zero hunger.
I know
Thank
you're
you so
wrapping
much.
it up, but
Yes.
we are over time and we need to move on with our next presenter so that we don't cut anybody short. And I hate to do that to you, but if you said hashtag your mental health currency, I would encourage everyone to go ahead and trend that on your social media. And Dr. Juliet, we thank you so much for your amazing presentation and all of the information that you have shared. Miss Juliet, African Wonder Woman, we appreciate all that you are doing. We are going to move on now to our next presenter. Our next presenter, we have already introduced her. It is Dr. Susan Coney, Ambassador of Peace and Reconciliation from Kenya. I present to you Dr. Susan Coney.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sheila. I'm very happy to be here. The presentations are becoming more and more interesting, and especially the approach of the kingdom approach. And I would really like, again, to thank Dr. Robertson for this session, and especially this forum, which has united many women leaders and even men to come and discuss issues to do with the mental health. I would also like to thank Dr. Haji Hanmoon, who is actually the founder of the Women's Federation for World Peace, and also the International Association for First Ladies for Peace, which I also coordinate in Africa. She saw, with her wisdom, visionary wisdom and leadership, she saw the need of promoting women in the role of solving the global issues, and especially establishing the world of peace. And I'm very, very happy for Dr. Anyari, who actually associated us in this and mentored us. And then he also introduced us and invited us to this forum. Mental health is an issue which can never be ignored. And if I have to go back to the description of what is mental health in the real sense, mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, work productively, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. Okay, there are 3 components of this definition. That is the well-being, and there is effective functioning of an individual, and also contribution towards the community. What I'm going to cover today is about how mental health does affect the decent work and economic growth. This is something which is so important, and especially in our daily lives, because we have to make a living, and at the same time also we have to contribute towards the growth of our nations, our economies, and also we have to ourselves also we have to exist in this world. So our approach, given the approach of more like prevention approach of our mental health, the first thing is I would like to talk about is self-acceptance. As an individual, to have good mental health, to have a balanced mental health, one has to accept themselves first. There are many things happening in this world, and of course, social media is a part of it, which is also a good plus. But also sometimes when we get influenced and also many other things around us. Sometimes it's very difficult to appreciate what you have and to actually count your blessings. That is what we call it. The professor who talked first, he said about how wonderfully we are made, each one of us, and how precious and unique we are. It's important that we develop our own potentiality, because we are put here by whoever put us here with a purpose. There is a saying which says that no one can put you down unless you allow them to. So self-appreciation and acceptance, the way you are made, and to really look for the talents and skills that you have, is one of the most important things towards having a balanced and good mental health. And the second one is the purpose of life. Sometimes it's good to ask myself or yourself, what is the purpose of life? What am I doing here? To have goals and believe that a sense of direction and meaning is important in my life, so that in the morning when I wake up and prepare myself to go out, I know what the purpose is. And at the end of this life, by the time I'm going to the other world, I actually know that I fulfilled my purpose. There seems to be a vacuum in many people's lives. And sometimes when there is that vacuum, there's kind of disillusioned and loses the meaning of life. Others seek inspirations from all kinds of sources. Others seek guidance and healing from an inner entity that is a higher entity. Some of we call them all kinds of names. Some people call him God. Others they say higher power. Others they say Yahweh. Others they say Jehovah. Others they say supreme being, and others say is heavenly parent. Given that God has two characteristics, He is the mother, He is our father, and also the mother. So He is our parent, heavenly parent. So there's a saying which says that the knowledge of God is the beginning of wisdom. It's good to understand that each one of us, we did not put ourselves here. Someone did that. And this person has a purpose for us. So the minute we understand and we appreciate what is my purpose, then my life journey begins, because I know where I come from and I know where I'm going, and which way and which method or which road I'm going to use to reach that goal. The other part is I would like to talk about is autonomy. We have to check on our self-direction is guided by one's own socially accepted internal standards. Which standard do we choose among many? There are so many standards. When we look around us, when we look at the social media, when we look at the whole world, everyone comes with their own standard. But what is the original standard? The one who created us. What does He want for us? What is the standard that He has for us? So we have to really search. As the Bible says, knock and it will be opened. Seek and you find. The standard is there. So another one is, the fourth one is positive relations in the family. We are living in a world where now the family is living as a nuclear family, only the father and mother and the children. There is no other connection. And we know that truly everything we learn, our initial stages in our life, we learn from the family. Having satisfying personal relationships in which empathy and intimacy is expressed is of paramount importance. There is dire need to nurture healthy relationships within the family, the extended family, and within the community, as the whole community is responsible for actually taking care of anyone who comes within the family, the children as well, so that they can raise responsible citizens. In the African setting, we live in Africa, actually in many cultures, the aunties, they play the role of raising the daughters. They are not their own children, but the aunties. They are the ones who are actually like the guardians or godmothers to take care of the little girls. They teach them how to go through life, navigate through life in various ways. even about sexuality, about marriage, how to prepare for marriage and all that. And also the uncles take care of the little boys. So the parents do not have the ultimate burden of taking care of, because they would also be having other issues. And there's that setup in the community that truly this child, whether is a girl or a boy, is part of us. And we all need to take collective responsibility in taking care of them. So this creates an environment, a healthy environment for that child to know that it's not only the father and mother, they belong to a whole community or even to a whole nation, of a whole nation. So her family is the school of love, and that is where we learn most of the things. So most of the ideals or even values that we do have, and sometimes, unfortunately, some vices we do have, we actually learn it from the family. So we really need to strengthen the families so that we can have strong communities, strong nations, even a stronger world where peace can prevail, starting from the family, from the individual to the family, to the community, and even to the nation. We must try by all means to prevent illness, mental illness at an early stage. Most of the time, the parents are too busy making a living. And in fact, they are not able to detect the problems when their child is too small. So when we have a family setup, a community setup, it's very easy to find this kind of problems and then address them from an early stage. So, and there's also number 5, environmentalist mastery, the capacity to manage the complex environment according to one's own needs. So knowing what kind of environment one is growing is also crucial, as it prepares one to make the right choices. And this needs guided by universal principles. So this is important to create a good environment wherever you are, and also to have good company. Even in the work environment, where we go, where we are, it's very important that we do have a good environment, and especially to nurture a spiritual environment, or even an environment where truly the person can feel that they are really benefiting, not only externally, but they're also growing internally as well. The personal growth is the insight of one's potential for self-development, which really needs not only the actual physical growth, there is also the spiritual growth, and something which you make you, or really give you a fulfilling life. By the time you leave this world, because you are not here for eternity, you didn't left something or some footprints in this world. So mental health is important in all that, and is a disease. It's good also to understand that this needs to be a global, humanitarian, and development priority, and a priority in every country. The approach needs to be holistic, as I said, the external and external as well, and also the institution of family can be strengthened so that everything that we do can actually be monitored, and also they can strengthen especially the children, so that they can grow up to be good citizens. And also when they gain employment, or even they start their own businesses, or whatever happens, they can actually contribute towards the growth and development of their communities and in their nation. I'm very, very happy to be part of it. There's a lot we can develop. There's a lot we can do. Women Federation have been engaged in healing hearts projects, which is working on helping women to heal themselves from childhood trauma. Some of the things we suffer from are childhood traumas. Maybe someone suffered when they were still young, and these are not detected when one is young. So it does affect someone even at old age, even when they go to the workplace, it does affect them. So these women are now able to take care of their children, and the children are also able to grow well, and also follow up their school schedules. And eventually, of course, they will have good work. They can have decent work, and they can contribute towards the development of their countries. So thank you so much for this invitation. Actually, there's a lot we can discuss, and I'm sure that we are also learning a lot from the other presenters. I'm very happy to be part of it, and I pray that we can have good conclusions, so that we can, all of us, contribute towards the SDGs, which is really a global issue, and especially the mental health issue. We really need to take care of that. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Susan Coney, for your presentation. We will continue ahead with our next presenter. We will present to you again. I have read her bio and her introduction. We have Maria speaker for global leadership, mental health, and also women and girl child empowerment advocate, community builder, leader, and philanthropist. So I present to you, Maria.
Thank you once again, Dr. Sheila. Thank you. And I just wanted to acknowledge to you that you did well. Remember, you are African, yes, origin, by lineage, but I understand, just like we say as Africans, English is not our mother tongue, so we can butcher it. My name's Ashona. It is not your mother tongue, but you did your best. So I just see it fitting that I greet you in my Bantu languages. Once again, I will say Habari, Jambo, Dumela, Muzuri, Murishani, Makadi. I feel honored to be among such distinguished experts. I take this as a learning curve and an opportunity of a lifetime, because I believe that when great minds sit together, great things can happen. So I again selected the SDG 5, and that is one that stands for the gender equality. And the reason I did that is, as a woman, I feel it is my duty to stand in the gap for the voice, to amplify the voice of the voiceless. One of the things that I chose again on the strategy that I'll look at is to promote empowerment of women and girls through technology. Because if anything that taught us to look at technology in a different way was COVID-19. We were taken by surprise. We didn't know what to do. The order of the day became hope, because all we could hold on to was hope. But I want you to sit back and think about those women and girls where technology has not reached them. What do you think their world looked like? Today, it's just so relevant that we speak on mental health, an issue that could be regarded as taboo in other cultures. Remember, mental health is real, but it's something that's not visible. It's a sickness that's not visible. So during COVID times, no technology, no internet access, no phone access. What do you think their world was like? What do you think their lives were like? We can only imagine. But I'll let your conscience be the guide. Because in your seats as experts, you then go on to think beyond and outside the box when we think of solutions. What is it that we can do to change the status quo? I don't want to go into the history of yesteryear. I don't want to hold on to that, the movements, the chants, because I think as women groups, as activists, as feminists, we have chanted, we have marched, we have sung, we have spoken at high tables, at closed door meetings, round tables, but inequality still prevails. Yet one of the facts that was highlighted today from a biblical context is that when God created men and women, we were created in his image. And I would love to think that God above did not say the woman is to be subjected to pain because that is what she's born of. I don't think that was what God said. And I stand to be corrected. But however, we were reminded again by the speaker that we are stewards. We are servants who are supposed to work. And this is what I stand to do as a citizen of the world, of the universe. I serve. I served my 25 years in the corporate world, but I dedicated the next 25 to serving, to being part of the change I want to see in this world. That took me back home, but I continue to be inspired by women that are doing great things in technology. I am inspired by Nina in Brazil, who has taken technology to another level by teaching through YouTube and any of the media channels she can get her hands on. But that is another way to spread the awareness. I am inspired by a sister from the continent, Carolyn Simon, who is now known to be a tech evangelist. She has set herself to empower over 800,000 African girls, introducing them to technology. We see the power of what technology can do to empower women and girls, thus giving them the hope to dream and to become the best versions of themselves. This is what gives me hope. This is what makes me do what I love to do every day. If I can make change or make an impact to one girl, one woman at a time. But today we can address and come up with solutions. But remember, you can come up with the solutions, but we cannot prescribe solutions in communities that we do not understand. My challenge to all the thought thinkers, change makers, is before we derive or come up with these solutions, let's also be cognizant that these people have a culture, have traditions that we seek to understand. This is when we can come to changing mindsets. You cannot come and prescribe the medicine if you have not diagnosed the disease. So for us to have effective solutions that are practical, that's why you heard me at the beginning reference empowerment that is sustainable, empowerment that is practical, because when we get into that topic, I think as women leaders or advocates of empowerment, we have defranchised women in the process because we have failed to define what empowerment truly is. Because others who associate empowerment with going to conferences. And that means those that are subjected to staying out in the rural areas or our country, the country as you would want to, out in the country as maybe in North America you would define. Some of them would never have gone to conferences. So are we saying they are unempowered? Are we doing our part? But without digressing and leaving the topic of the day, which is technology and how it has helped and how it will help. Again, it cannot be possible if we don't think outside the box and understand the communities and the societies that we are referencing. I know there's a part where we say no one left behind and you ask the powers be to make a pledge. Sometimes I say words or verbiage. Words is cheap. We can say what we want at the expense of the people that get us where we are today. And I'm speaking directly to the policy makers, the powers be. The people get you there, but we tend to forget the very people that got us there. But through the power of technology, we'll be able to reach many more, especially in instances when we are affected by pandemics and we shut down and the only source we have is technology. That leaves those that are privileged and have access to technology to move on and live on whilst we leave the others behind. I remember years ago when I was in primary school, introduced to technology through the radio programs. Maybe we need to go back to yesteryear and appreciate those very solutions that worked. We had radio programs. Children were able to gather together and listen to stories. Maybe that's where I got the love for English literature, when I started hearing the stories through radio. Awareness programs can be still spread through radio. Let's not use radio for channels that break and defranchise the others. In this case, I'm talking of women and girls, where they are demeaned. Because whatever messages are put through the different social media forums and channels, sometimes they do not bring the best out of the women and girls. But that's not to say it's not our responsibility. It's our responsibility to invest in systems that create jobs that accommodate women and girls, fostering equal rights to economic resources. And more so, one that I like to really take before I leave the stage is hold the policymakers accountable. And how do we do that? I remind them that they too came from a mother, and it could be their mother that they are subjecting and oppressing. But whilst the battle is long and tedious for the women, we have wept. Like I said, we have cried and we cry. Everyone has a responsibility. The church itself has a responsibility. Remember, the people come to a church. What is it that the church can do? What role can the church do to bring awareness, to raise awareness of mental health in families, in communities? And how can you do this? Through the very channels that we are promoting, which is technology. We are saying that, as again, before I step off, I'll leave you with 2 words, because this needs a day, or if not hours of discussion. But I will leave you 2 words that I borrowed from our African Bantu languages, Ubuntu. Ubuntu meaning humanity. I am because we are. Humanity towards others. Umoja means to strive for and maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. You are your brother's keeper. You are your sister's keeper. But this job cannot be done alone or as silos. I believe in the power of collaboration and partnership. And when we start speaking collectively with one voice, then we will be able to deliver solutions that are practical and sustainable to the very communities that are different. Let our differences not deter you, or a difference in nationalities, creed, religions, cultures. They should not deter you from being progressive, but they should instead encourage you to speak collectively and understand and appreciate each other as humanity. We are all equal before God. So thus, once again, I will say thank you to Dr. Shirley and to you all amazing speakers before me and those that will come after me. Thank you. It's been an honor to be in your midst, and I hope to continue to learn. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I know that we all do, Maria, and I will move on forward to our next speaker for the interest of time. We have Apostle Dr. Sonia B. Elliott by way of the USA. Dr. Sonia Elliott.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sheila, once more for having me. It's been very interesting, very informative today, all that has been spoken of. And I'd like to focus on the area of the goal number 3, which speaks of good health and well-being. Also goal 16, which promote just peace and inclusive society. And also goal 5, deal with the gender equality. And as I continue on, it will be interjected throughout. One of the things that we want to understand with mental health is a biological. It can be a biological problem also, which we want to be able to look at this. Because when we look at the facet of man, we see that throughout the ages, there are characteristics which have been found common in every person. And when we're speaking of mental health doesn't have any specific culture that it comes to. Mental health problems come through every culture and every tribe. And so the characteristics that we look at are the characteristic of faith and the belief system. And looking at the creative productiveness, conscience, and knowing right from wrong, and what are we attached to? What is it? Who or what do we worship? And so it's a mindset of where we are in our life, in whatever phase in life. When I look at mental health, I see that we have people from all facets of life who go through mental issues. And we have a tendency to back away from it. It can be looked at when we look at the biological factor. It's a brain chemistry. And we have some may have family history of mental health problems, which also affects people who already have mental health to initiate. It was initiated by family history. So mental illness is of the brain, it's not of the mind. It is when affected by the thoughts, it makes it difficult for one to cooperate with everyday life. So we can see how we can interject it into the health, into poverty, and see how it's interjected and how you can have a peaceful life or promote peace among all. And this can also be caused by genetics. There are disorders such as anxiety disorder. There are some experiencing one or more type of disorder. And there may be people having issues with sleep. As we look at the pandemic, we see that someone may have been having an anxiety disorder, and we see the way of fear is now promoting that anxiety even more. And so there are those who are thinking of harming themselves. How do we handle that? And we're looking at mental health as a kingdom assignment. We're looking at mental health as something that is a holistic approach that the kingdom-minded folks can now understand, because we're created in the image of God and his likeness. And we know that God-like attributes flow out of human spirit and separate man from the animal kingdom. And so the human spirit is eternal, and it yearns for communion with the eternal spirit. So we find that we are always in search of a relationship, in search of connecting. And so now we look at where do we go from here as we see mental health, and we see in the SDG, how do we bring mental health into the kingdom and how we apply it with a kingdom mindset. It takes us having a change in our paradigm, the paradigm and how we look at things. One thing that is always present is change. God is constantly causing a change. And so when we hold on to certain traditions, we may not move with the change of what God is doing in this season. And so the world functions on change. We see now our mind has to be at the capacity to adjust to the change. And so change doesn't stop when we sleep, and we cannot avoid change. So what we can do is just change our paradigm. There's a transformation that occurs because the Bible says the transformation occurs by the renewing of our mind. If we have we are incapacitated with our mental acuity. If we're not able to comprehend, then it becomes a challenge, and it now brings the stress factor, which now becomes a mental issue. And if it's not dealt with correctly, it can also promote it to become worse. And so Transformation begins to happen when anytime we become seriously and intense in learning how to change through the kingdom principles, learning how we can adjust, how we can change our mind, how we can do things differently. Transformation is at the heart of God, and it makes us more aware of the crisis. We become more aware of the crisis that we see in the world crisis we see going on now, through transformation we can address epidemic issues as we are doing today. Today, we are addressing epidemic issues. And how do we reach the poor? How do we reach the homeless? How do we reach the orphans and the widows? So these are assignments that has always been there, but it takes something to happen to bring us to this awareness. And as we look at the SDG, we are looking at now we can bring in the kingdom and the kingdom of God, the mindset of God into what these policies, to recognize that leaders also go through changes. There are leaders, in my experience, leaders who are having issues with stress, having family issues, having issues with substance abuse. And I'm reminded of working as a registered nurse and the night shift in the ER. Many leaders would be coming in because they are addicted. So what? Medication that would keep them calm. And so these are issues that's not addressed in the body of Christ because it's a taboo. The expectation on leaders that leaders should be high and powerful all the time, and almost as if the leaders do not have pain or experience pain in any way, shape, or form. So you find that now leaders are even pressured even more because of the expectation on them, not having an outlet, not being able to express themselves in a place that is safe, a place that they can be trusted, and they can trust the individual to not expose them in any way, because already we have a taboo where this is concerned. So you find that now, how do you bring gender equality and empower leaders? How do you empower them? By way of now bringing more education in, by more leadership development and leadership training, and bringing them in that they can get a better understanding that mental health is part of the system. Man is tripart. You have spirit, soul, and body. You have the portion of man within the soul that operates with the will. The body state, everything connects, everything is connected. And when one part is missing, another part will be working harder. So we now look at where society has put pressure on leaders, whether it be pastor, it's whatever leadership role one has, that there's a pressure that is placed on leaders because of the expectation of others. And now that there's a stigma, not able to express themselves, it now brings a pressure to the mind and causes one to be in a position of not being effective in their leadership. And so we have to now break down the barriers in the mindset. Different does not mean that it's better than or worse than. It's just different. And we have to try to adjust to this. So there are times when we do not understand others, we do not understand cultures. If we don't understand the culture, we may have a tendency to look down at the culture because of the ignorance and not knowing that it's an opportunity to learn something from different cultures. So if we're really looking at it, the barriers can be broken when we take off the limits. Let's take off the limits. What limits do we put on ourselves? We put limits on ourselves, and therefore we say we cannot go further. We cannot. But we are empowered through the word of God, which is giving us the opportunity to look outwards and see what is on the outside. But there is something on the inside of us that brings new insight to the outside. We have to understand the population mindset. So we need to have a conscious awareness of our surrounding. We get understanding from the kingdom culture. What is the principles? In order to impact and reach others, we must remove whatever barrier we have that created a hindrance in our mindset. So what we need to learn other cultures. It is not just one cultures of the mindset, how people think, the way they think. We're looking at the pandemic. Some people may be so stressed because of the pandemic. When there's other people, they don't miss the TV because they never had it, but they're able to handle, they're able to cooperate, they're able to live and not be stressed out. So when we look at the stress factor that is coming on society now, we have to look at how we perceive things, how we can learn, how we can glean, how we can be open in our mindset to understand the other population. And this, we can bring it in and know that there's the unity that we need, coming together in unity, coming together in one accord. And this is what is needed at this time. As we look at goal number 5, and we're looking at empowering women and girls, we know that this is something that we have ignored because of what the mindset says. Women are not allowed, and in different cultures, there's certain things that's not allowed. But understanding the culture will take the weight off of many things, and then we can come together and bring all that we have together and glean together. Before I close, I'd like to share. Leaders have been really embracing mental health now. Why? Because it's so close to home, and recognizing that it is a problem. It doesn't have to be covered up, and they can now come in and find a safe place where they can express themselves, where they can recognize that they're not the only one that have issues. You have the secret of the substance abuse. This is something that is very prevalent. It's prevalent because it's a coping mechanism. It's a coping mechanism when stressed, and it's been used. Some many are on anxiety medication, have to come in to the kingdom to learn. When the Bible speaks about casting down images, the images one sees that will exalt itself against the knowledge of God, casting down all the images that you remember from the past that brings you to the place of being so anxious. And then what does it do to you? It causes you not to function at your capacity. So I would encourage, I'm really encouraged today on this Mental Health Day, and I thank Dr. Shirley for allowing me to be a part of this. And there are so many leaders that need to get in touch with who they are, whose they are, and where they are going, because they are vital. They are important to the universe. They are important to all who are here today. And leaders have to know that they are well needed in this time and in this season. We have to get connected. We have to get developed. We have to get to a place where we can be sustained, a place where we can now look at one another and come together as one with each other. And we have to look at leadership development, rational connectivity and unity, expression of identity and image, accountability, also from harmful autonomy to biblical interdependency. We move from pastoral isolation to connectivity, and from fragmentation to common direction, and from crisis orientation to mission driven. We have to come to a place where we can restore the trust in key relationship and return to Yeshua's teaching and instruction, and collaborate with one another. I thank you so much for having me today. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sonia B. Elliott, for your presentation and your words of wisdom that you have shared with all of us today. Next, we will have Dr. Dana Carmouche come on next. We have read her complete bio, but Dr. Dana Carmouche, apostle, educational consultant, leadership development coach, keynote speaker, and author. Dr. Dana Carmouche.
I apologize, everyone. and I have super internet here in my office. So he said whatever needs to be shared. First, we give honor to God, glory to God for this time, this gathering, for this meeting. I thank you, Dr. Regina, for setting the stage for a timely conversation relative to mental health. I think it's okay. And so my internet is doing its own thing right now, purposely just going out. I do apologize for the connectivity issues, which are never the case. So with that being said, let me just jump in for the sake of time. The SDGs that I wanted to take a look at and kind of discuss briefly were relative to SDG 3, 4, and 5, because I believe that they're interconnected, they're interwoven. And when you begin to look at it from a perspective of the interconnected systems of oppression, I don't think you can speak about the quality of education without speaking about gender equality and good health and well-being. They go together. And so for the purpose of this summit meeting, let me look at it from a framework of intersectionality. And even though Dr. Crenshaw coined the term intersectionality and looking at it from gender equality relative to judicial systems, I want to look at it where I bridge these three SDGs together. And for the call to action, I want to anchor it in the power of partnership. And so I believe the power of partnership is not a new concept. It is actually a God concept, a kingdom concept. And so that concept is one that when God created humanity, he created mankind, what we know, it was for partnership. We are in partnership now, collaboration with Holy Spirit. When Jesus sent the apostles, when he sent them out two by two, partnership. He said it's not good for man to be alone. So he created woman, partnership. And so what we're going to do in this time and in this season to deal with the issues, the crises that are plaguing not just us, but all of humanity, it's going to require partnership. And so that partnership, I want to pull out one, I think, main crevice, if you will, or the foundation. And if I can, let me look at a case study, a biblical case study. Let me look at the life of Joshua. In the book of Numbers, chapter 27, we first see the book opening up, and you can go back and read it. For the sake of time, I won't cover it, but I want to create a stage, if you will, to highlight the three areas that I kind of want to leave with you, or the nuggets that I want to share with you. And the book of Numbers opens up with a conversation about the daughters of Zelophehad. And they had come to Moses, the leader, to say, it is not lawful, it is not right what you're doing to us, because we don't have any brothers, that our name, our legacy should die in the earth realm. But instead, give us what is rightfully due us. I'm going somewhere. Gender equality is one of the pieces. But I want to hop down to where Moses has to transition power. He has to transition authority. And so leadership is so paramount in everything that we're going to do. And I know other speakers have already said it, and I echo each one of them. And I'm passionate about leadership, and global leadership in particular. And so when we're talking about leadership, we understand that nations rise and fall based on leadership. And so the Bible tells us, when you have Proverbs 29:2, you can go back and read it. When we have righteous leadership, when we had godly leadership and power, the people flourish. But when we do not, the people perish, or the people groan, or they go through challenges. So that we must understand who's in authority. And the Lord gave Moses very specific instructions. And he said in verse 18, you can go and read it. He told Moses to take Joshua, the son of Nun, a man who has the spirit of leadership. So my question first is to all of us who are leaders: have we asked the Lord for the spirit of leadership? Because there is such a spirit that allows us to govern, allows us to execute the kingdom principles, allows us to engage at a different dimension, in a different realm, so that we're able to move forward. So relative to that, when God gave Moses the instructions to go lay hands on Joshua. Why? To impart the accountability, the responsibility, to make sure that the authority that was necessary for him to govern in the space that he was in was there. It was crisis moment. And so now that we see the pandemic that has hit not only America, but the whole entire world, that we're in crisis mode. And there's a different type of leadership necessary for crisis mode. So think of it when Joshua had to take the children of Israel across the Jordan. So they were traveling in unfamiliar territory. They were charting in waters that they had never seen before. And so it required a different kind of leadership. And so when I look at the 3 SDGs that I talked about, because I'm an education consultant, I look through the lens of education. And when I'm talking about intersectionality, I'm talking about the intersectionality of how these are intertwined. And so one of the things that I see a lot in educational arenas right now, in K-12 district in particular, as well as post-secondary institutions, is the increase of what we call PTSS. I know we're familiar with PTSD, but PTSS is the precursor to PTSD being formalized. And so PTSS being the post-traumatic system syndrome. And so that means the exposure. We saw it when students were, the disconnect of students in education and their inability to be able to engage in a traditional setting that they had become accustomed to. And when we went into the pandemic, we saw the breakdown of what I like to call the digital divide. And so we saw it exacerbate some of the inequities that already existed. And because I'm big on policy and I write policy, and so one of the global briefs that I began to look at back in 2019, I was actually writing a paper relative to the war on drugs, which is a foreign policy that was championed by America and purported to all of the other countries around the world. And when I began to look at the war on drugs, I began to see some undercurrents, and I saw the dilapidation of infrastructures in communities of color, typically BIPOC populations. And so when I began to look at BIPOC populations, I noticed that there was economic instability in these communities, where the war on drugs had ravaged these communities. And then they had inequitable educational systems, because the quality of educators that were going into these communities were less than stellar. So the fragility of the economic structure limited the opportunities and the ability. And then you saw the disenfranchisement, and that ability to close the wealth gap was dissipating quickly. And so as I began to look at other policies, I noticed a consistency of that. And as I go back to the power of partnership, I wanted to set the stage for that, because as we look at the global policy, we have to understand when we are writing policy. So I'm talking from a macro level. When we begin to write policies that are going to impact communities at a micro level, then we must consider the power of partnership. We must engage community organizers. And I know it's been said, because community organizers actually have what I call the proximity to they're in proximity to power, if you will. Because of their proximity, they're able to be boots on the ground. They're able to go in and understand the nuances or the complexities in these communities, that when we write policy from a macro level, from a global level, we may not know the full breadth and depth of everything. And so we see through one kind of lens. But the intersectionality is that these all intertwine to create a unique identifier. So for example, I'm an African-American female. I live in America. I grew up in what would be considered the ghetto, or all of those, and exposed to different things. And so we have to consider that partnership and that engagement. The next thing I want to say is we must reimagine education for 21st century learners. You cannot continue to do education the way you did it 100 years ago, which we still are. There must be an evolution. We are in the fourth wave of an industrial revolution. There is a merging of digital technology and AI. We must begin to switch, because these learners learn differently. So we must have conversations with neuroscientists who can lend their measure in this space. The holistic student success deals with early childhood development. We must, as a society, spend dollars relative to early childhood development. and closing the digital divide. I know Marie said it earlier, that technology piece is paramount. The inability to allow that to be an equitable playing field will widen the gap and the illiteracy around the world. And then the last thing is increased literacy and career opportunities for girls. As a woman goes, so goes a nation. If we do not combat occupational gender segregation, we will lose our grip or our ability to I think, engage on a global scale economically. And America is seeing that in what we call the middle skills gap, because our inability to compete on a global scale is because of not preparing the next generation, and definitely not preparing females to go into those high wage, high earning occupations. And so as we educate women, we also educate nations. Why? Because the nurturer. So her ability to take care of the family as well as take care of the community at large that she lives in. And so these are things that we have to consider, and we must continue these conversations and it not be a one-off, so that we begin to prepare the next generation of leaders. And the church has a responsibility. We must lay hands. We must begin to see the spirit of leadership and begin to thrust them forward for the next assignment that God has for them. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, Dr. Sheila. Thank you, Dr. Regina, and all of the participants that have come before me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dana. I know your technology, your internet was going in and out in the beginning, but God is good, because it was perfectly clear and we were able to hear your entire message. So thank you, Dr. Dana Carmouche. I want to thank all of the panelists who have come on and shared just a breadth of knowledge as it pertains to mental health awareness, mental health services, and how we can take these initiatives and move and provoke and initiate and create change as it pertains, again, to mental health from a world perspective and also from a kingdom perspective, because that is the only way that we will be able to evoke sustainable change when we take a kingdom approach in doing so. I will now present to you Dr. S. Regina Robertson. She was on just a little while ago, but we are going to bring her back on. She is the spearhead of this amazing summit that we have had here today. Born in Trinidad and Tobago and now residing in the U.S., Dr. S. Regina Pierre Robertson is an ordained apostle, mental health professional, leadership and retreat consultant, stress management, life purpose coach, author, transformational speaker, and I could go on and on and on, because it would not be enough time in the day for me to talk about this amazing woman of God, but I am going to bring her on for her to go ahead and close out our summit for today. I present to you Dr. Regina Robertson.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sheila Williams, and thank you so much to all the amazing speakers that we've had today. Speakers who were directly chosen by God to speak on his behalf. So I am in awe, and I too have learned so much. You never know so much that you can't learn more. You always have to be in a learning mode. And I want to say to us today, to remind us, as we're waiting on Dr. Renville to come in and be our keynote speaker, I realize that he is here now, and perhaps I should move out the way and make room for him. Dr. Sheila?
Yes. Are we going to bring on Dr. Renville?
Yes, let's bring him on, and I'll close out after.
Thank you. So we will bring on Dr. Renville, but please allow me an opportunity to appropriately introduce our keynote speaker for today. We have Dr. Jason Renville, Ambassador Dr. Jason Renville, a global kingdom agent who serves as human rights representative to the United Nations, global ambassador at large as the ecclesiastical officer with the same organization, UN, under the Economic and Social Council, the NGO. Additionally, Dr. Renville is the leadership and certifying agent for the President's Volunteer Service Award Program in the United States, Senior Director of Leadership, Governance, and Human Development of OPAD, Organization for Poverty Alleviation and Development, UN USA, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean, an educational representative of United Graduate College and Seminary International. He is a TV host who demonstrates eloquent oratory skills and his prowess as a prolific writer. Dr. Renville is the recipient of several prestigious awards that are inclusive of the Nelson Mandela Global Peace Icon Award and the World Greatness Awards. Dr. Renville is the CEO and founder of Jason Renville International and the co-founder along with his wife, Jenny, of the Goshen Safe Haven Community Development Center for Development, Education and Empowerment, and an organization whose mission is to empower the community with the personal and professional development tools and strategies to achieve their personal dreams and become successful role models to future generations. His intense research in strategic organizational leadership, human development, and governmental studies have afforded him many opportunities to dialogue about leadership, authenticity, human relations, women's empowerment, social reconstruction, economic development, mental health, and a host of other humanitarian issues. A rare gem to the kingdom indeed. I present to you Dr. Renville.
Good afternoon to all of you. A felicitous afternoon, as I would say. Pardon me if you are hearing any kind of background noise, but I'm actually in a hotel. I'm traveling, and so it is great to be on here with you all. So I will begin by my salutations by saying to your excellencies, members of the diplomatic corps, distinguished guests, those that are special invitees, and our audience, streaming audience, all of you, wherever you find yourself in cyberspace and in whatever timeline you find yourself, a felicitous afternoon to you, and a happy, but mainly a glorious global mental health day. Today is World Mental Health Day. What a propitious time within our global village to raise awareness, to raise the curtain of dialogue, so we are able to lay line upon line, precept upon precept. I had a opportunity of listening in while I was at another function. I'm now coming in just this minute from another function, and I was able to hear the other presenters. Everyone so powerfully articulated their key interest within context of today's agenda that has been given by Dr. Shirley from a Kingdom Approach, the Global Leadership Mental Health Summit. This is a summit, and so I want to take some time today to speak to you to operationalize those variables so that we can have a working understanding and a succinct summation of the sentences everyone spoke. And as I add my voice to this sentence, I am hoping that it will be a comprehensive paragraph in context of what we are presenting and hoping to achieve here today. So what I want to look at first is to operationalize some of these variables. We're looking at global. And so we know that everything has gone global. We are no longer the international, whimsical, spread out world that you cannot reach. It's a big village, hence the terminology being frequently used by members of global agencies, powerful global agencies, namely the United Nations, the European Union, the United States, USAID, the World Bank, IMF, and CARICOM, and all of those powerful global conglomerations who are part and parcel of the mental health conversation. And so now we could no longer relegate the issue of mental health, which is a subsidiary and a co-component of goal 3 of the SDGs. Those of you who are conversant with the SDGs and you are familiar with the SDGs, you understand that the SDGs were developed to be a equalizer, if you will, within the global village, of which governance, mental health, and equity, justice, all of the topics, all of the variables, all of the areas of interest that everyone touched on today. And what is different about this year's summit is that not only does it encapsulate the essence of goal 3 and the other goal 13, and those are, it encapsulates a broad base of all of the SDGs. And so we are in a global village. Everything is within a global context, and it is from a kingdom approach. And you cannot have a global discussion without without going back to the blueprint or the pattern. So we're looking at this. The globalization is a synthetic derivative from the kingdom. The message of the kingdom was the total governance of God, good governance, equity and justice and righteousness and fairness, as Dr. Regina Shirley would say, leverage the playing field. God is after equity and justice and fairness. And so now we understand, in order for us to tackle global issues, namely mental health and leadership, we must understand how to engage from a global context. And so now there are 3 things that we have to look at. We have to understand now modalities, we have to understand technologies, and we have to understand platform within the global village, so that we are able now to deploy the government of the kingdom. So we are able to establish the blueprint and the pattern in context of what the Father has created us to establish as stewards and the guardrails of this time. So we're looking at global, the global context. We're looking at mental health within a global context, and so we addressed the issue of globalization, which we all know it's a derivative from the kingdom. So we're going to go over to mental health, mental well-being, mental health. Now we must understand that everyone has mental health. Mental health is by no means a recent phenomenon. If we look at Jesus Christ, our Lord, the King of this kingdom that we so profess, we look at Jesus. He is the wonderful counselor. He is a master counselor. He preached a message using a modality from within the context of the kingdom that antedates even psychosocial modalities that we used as treatment plans. Now you all are saying, Dr. Renville, what in the world are you talking about? Now let me tell you what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the message of repentance. We are on mental health. But what Jesus did at the time when he came to preach the message of the kingdom to the Roman Empire, who Romanized the world with its barbaric system of governance, we do have a message. The first message he preached was a mental well-being message. He says to repent. So we got to tackle the issue of our thought processes. Why was he addressing the issue of repentance? Because a psychotherapist, someone who is in the arena of psychology and clinical therapists, even lay therapists, understand when an intake is performed, an intake is with the outcome. It is with the understanding that you will achieve a desired outcome. So Jesus realized that there is a gross psychosocial deprivation within the Roman Empire. And as he's releasing the message of the kingdom, he says to repent. What does that mean? Now we are on the we are on the variable of mental well-being, global. We talk about that, mental health. So now we're looking at what it is Jesus is saying. So repent means literally to ascend to the highest echelon of the mind, which is the thought life, and change it. So this is one of the responsibilities of a clinical therapist and even lay counselors. It is to carry out a comprehensive, succinct intake. And so with their prognosis, with their outcomes, with their treatment plans and all of that stuff, they will be able to guide you to a place of orientation. So we can no longer leave out the message of well-being, mental health, Global Mental Health Day. I do not believe that we can adequately adequately and practically solve the message of the issue, the crisis of mental health, without addressing the issue of the mind. Hence these clinicians, the leadership issues and that we are having. Hence the role of the clinicians and the leadership issues that we're having. So we understand that the mental well-being of a country, and I'm taking this from Dr. Shirley. I heard she presented this exact terminology. I may be off with a couple of words. The mental well-being of a country drives the GDP of that country, which translates into the productivity within a global context. So if we are going to have productive citizens, we have to have people that are productive in their thinking. Now, I was invited to an ecumenical presentation about 10 to 12 years ago, the UN, and it was on sustainable development, the SDGs. And one of the things I said to one of the technocrats and the group of people that were there is that there can never be sustainable development without sustainable thinking. And I said, I can invite you to the Word of God where Jesus preached the message of sustainable thinking. Now, even God was the first architect of sustainable development. I don't have time to prove that to you, but I'm going to raise it as I'll do a quick curtain raiser. The pillars of sustainable development are economic, social, and environmental. If you look in the book of Genesis, what God said to Adam is that you have a garden, literally a globe, and the resources of that garden must be leveraged, and you must be able to think a specific way, and then you multiply that garden, the resources for economic multiplication, and without depleting the environment. And so we see that was just a curtain raiser in the conversation of Global Mental Health Day. It was not a part of the presentation, but we see the issue today of global mental health. We are tackling this issue today, and so we move on. We have spoken about the summit, the global village, mental health, and leadership. Now we must understand that leadership is the essence of leadership. It is the ability to influence, establishing good governance, establishing great governance, establishing the panacea for what is of now. Not only is great leadership necessary, we understand that without great leadership in these trying times, amid this global pandemic, amid the psychoses, the multiplicity of psychoses which are attending our brothers and sisters within the global village. Without good global leadership, we are going to collapse. We are going to topple. Now, it is very interesting that we have the same phrase with variables within the theme of our summit today. Global Mental Health Leadership Summit. Leadership, if you look back in the anatomy of what leadership means, it really means to lead in thought. And this is what Jesus was saying to the disciples, that if you ascend to the highest echelon of your thought life, which your mind, which is the thought life, and you change it, or you operate antithetical to what your current state of affairs, which is 180 degrees, you are moving in the opposite. You are moving in the opposite direction. And so now we understand that we are amid this evolving global pandemic. We are plagued with a series of psychosocial conditions, and the reason why we need good leadership, good governance, is to establish the prototype of leadership that was given in Genesis, which is the blueprint for sustainable development. You cannot have the SDGs being fully operationalized and appropriated without the proper context. Yes, the global agencies are being used to spearhead certain movements, but it is the kingdom's job to be able to export the government, the glory, the grace, and the goodness of its king within the context of the global village, using the modalities, the technologies, and the platform, whether it's technocratic, whether it's diplomatic, whether it's professional, whether it's prophetic, within this context of Global Mental Health Day, so that we are able to achieve the desire of our King. Jesus says that the word says it is with the mind that we serve God. And how we serve God? By serving others. You understand? And so we've got to be able to lead first in the mind. Repent. The message of repentance has nothing to do with you coming to the altar, but it has to do with high impact, comprehensive psychosocial intervention, prophetic and psychosocial interventions that will steer us in the dimension where we have our equanimity, we have our sagacity, and we have our robustness of thought intact. So we are able now to serve each other. So hence the phenomenon of good leadership. Now we look at the summit. Why do we call a summit? A summit is a call to the highest point on a governmental level. Why a governmental level? Because when a summit is called, technocrats, diplomats, and the highest representation of governmental officials will get together, and they will discuss key strategies, key tactics, key modalities, key technologies, key operationalizations, key resolutions, key codifications, and how do we achieve our agenda. And I believe that's why we are all here today. We are all technocrats, and we are all professionals, and we are all in our own right, and we are all deploying the gifts that we have been given and stored by God within the context of this conversation today. And I so believe that we are coming together with a comprehensive understanding, because there must be a comprehensive understanding of why today's World Mental Health Day. This day was set aside by the United Nations and all the other global agencies to raise awareness, not only to raise awareness. They're looking at the state of affairs of the psychosocial equanimity of individuals across the globe, when we are looking at women's empowerment, when we are looking at gender rights, when we're looking at equality between men and women in employment, we're looking at the wealth gap, the pay gap, the glass ceiling. We are looking at all of these different social reconstruction. We're looking at psychological freedom and liberation and orientation. We are looking at what drives our economies. The economy is a scale. It's a good mind, because mental health translates into real-time wealth. A healthy person is a wealthy person mentally. And I'm telling you how mental health is so imperative with everything we do. You can lose a mind. You can lose an arm. You can lose a leg. You can lose an eye. You can lose some teeth. You can lose an organ, but you can still function. But if you lose the mind, that is it. Every other area of your life is gone. And hence this conversation today. Now, what we need to look at some key terminologies for implementation, for consideration, implementation, and subsequent adaptation. Implementation, consideration, implementation, and application within a global context. Why are we looking at global mental health leadership in this context? Because once the leaders, the world leaders, once we have policy, there is this buzzword, which Dr. Shirley did some research work on this, implementation fidelity. Once we understand the involvement of public policy, once we get presidents and prime ministers and kings and potentates and secretary of states and ambassadors and senators and those that are responsible for policy, then we are able to shift the trajectory of a nation within the context of moving that nation forward. So it's no longer a parochial, it's no longer a professional approach where we just get the therapist or the mental health arm. We're seeing there is a demand being placed. Even the General Secretary Antonio Guterres of the United Nations is positing that mental health, mental well-being, mental health and wellness, which is under goal 3 of the SDGs, must now be front and center, because of it's critical not only for we to address climate change, but we must address the psychosocial landscape that is changing within our global village. And in order for us to understand, in order for us to make the necessary real-time changes, pragmatic changes, lasting changes, we must tackle where it begins, in the mind. And good health, hence good health becoming a priority. And he has led the charter and lead the charge, so that you have CARICOM, the EU, the AU, and all of these other agencies, along with USAID, World Bank, IMF, and even the United States government, to charge the leaders globally to begin to look at mental health from a policy perspective. Because once it is implemented, policies congruent to the operationalization of good mental health and well-being are implemented, then it becomes easier for those who are the professionals, the technocrats, to now roll out the training, the clinical training and the necessary training that they have had, so that they are able now to bring healing and move more so wholeness. So today we are in this place and we are talking about global mental health. We can look at the stats for a minute. We can look at in the pandemic, how we had almost 78. I have not looked at the updated stats, but in the height of the pandemic, almost domestic violence went up by 65%. We had pornography went up by 98%. We had the selling of the liquor went up by 300%. We had the abuse, a microaggression, macroaggression went up by almost 78%. And so we see how we were pressed and crushed and squeezed, and whatever were buried in our subconscious minds came up to the forefront, and we began to manifest in real time who we really were and who we really were in those exact scenarios. We saw the anger, we saw the rage, we saw the cancel culture without reason, we saw the attacking, we saw the venom, we saw the vexation, we saw the vitriol, we saw the denigration, we saw the decimation, we saw the demagnetization, we saw the parade in the global village of a stripping away of the civility and the consciousness of who we are within the context of royalty. There was no more equanimity. There was no more sagacity. There was no more balance, the balancing of the pendulum. Let me rhyme, let me reason, let me rationalize before I speak. It was the triggers and the stressors and the triggers converge. They created a confluence at the soul, the gates and the doors of the soul and the minds. And I'm talking about from global leaders descending all the way down. There are, let me tell you, some of the ruckus and riots that have taken place in the United Nations amongst global world leaders and ambassadors throwing chairs and all of the, because there is the inability to exercise self-governance amid debates. And so we understand that we must act with urgency if we want to be able to save humanity reasonably within the context of those who can be saved. We must act with urgency. We must understand that the global village, the globe has now become a fast village. It's the melting pot. It's the cosmic melting pot. And we must understand that. Number two, we must understand that mental health and well-being is at the pinnacle, is at the apex and the priority of who we are in terms of operationalizing. And we are heading for one of the greatest global resets in history. And if you talk to people, I did a blind survey and I said, do you know what that is? 9 out of 10 people said no. I do not understand. What is this global reset? Is this a conspiracy theory? Is this whimsical? Is it mythical? Is it out of your imagination? We are heading for one of the global resets, and what the global powers that be are actually doing, they are preparing the mind, because everything is in the mind, is the central processing unit of our modus operandi. And if we do not understand how to comprehensively and collectively bring the faculty of the mind in concert with the mind of Christ relative to how we are developed in the context of deploying, disseminating the good governance within the context of leadership, mental health, within the context of the global village, we are going to be dealing. There were stats that I was reading, and it says that by 2025, mental illnesses would have become the #1 killer, overtaking dementia and cancer. Why? Because people are just snapping, they're losing it. And so we must act now with urgency in order for us to get policy implementation fidelity, policy analysis. Let us look at what's working. Let us look at what is working and what's not. This cadre of professionals that have assembled here today. Let us begin to look at what's at the UN. Let us look at the World Bank. Let us look at the IMF. Let us look at what's working. Let us critically analyze what they have developed, and let us engage them in dialogue. Reach out to them, call them, send emails. Listen, this policy may not necessarily be incongruent to this grouping of people. Who did your SWOT analysis? Let us ask the questions. Let us engage in dialogue. Let us continue to educate. Let us continue to disseminate. Let us continue to deliberate incisively with the information, with the statistics, with the evolution of the real-time scenarios that we are seeing. And remember, from the context of the kingdom, this is what I want to say. From the context of the kingdom, we have the panacea. We not only have the panacea, but we have the blueprint to be able to establish good health and bring, from a professional and a prophetic standpoint within the global village, bring mental health or well-being and wellness to the place where it should be. I believe there should be a coining of the phrase governed by the kingdom of good health and well-being. Why? Because the mind is a kingdom. When the mind is king and your crown is straight, and the crown is lightened onto your thoughts, and when your crown is straightened, you can govern your personal kingdom with good sagacity, good equanimity, good poignancy, good strategies, insight, foresight, hindsight. Hence, you are now able to influence your family, who's now able to influence society, who's now able to influence a country, who is able now to contribute to the global landscape of mental health and wellness. And so today, before any further ado, and I keep deliberating and presenting to you, I want to thank Dr. Shirley for this comprehensive, this targeted, well thought out platform to address the issue of global mental health leadership initiatives. So we are able now to not only we're able to operationalize. You see, we got to move. One of my assignments is to get the conversation of mental health and well-being into the ear of global leaders, my sphere of influence. And so hence, policies will be affected. And when policies are affected, states are affected, communities are affected, counties are affected, your practice is affected in a positive way. And so I know this is one of my assignments. And so you have to find out where you fit, find your form, find the gate, find how you are wired, what modalities you must use, what platform must you use, what technology must you use, how do I disseminate, how do I disseminate this, which mode of technocratic prowess should I bring to the table, how do I go about this, how do I go about the discussion, the education, the awareness? Because mental health or mental wellness, the preferred terminology now, or mental well-being, it is everybody's business. It is the mother's business. It is the father's business. It is the corner. Listen, let me just break it down for you in real-time language. You understand? In pragmatic, real poetic language that you'll get it. It is from the president to a prostitute business. It is from the pimps to a pastor's business. It is from the corner store owner to a corporate executive business. It is from a mother to a merchant, from a father to the fitness trainer's business, mental health. And so today, I thank you for having me on, lending my voice to this global conversation in which I endeavor and intend to always be a brand ambassador for this modality, for the area of mental health and well-being, operationalizing these concepts and this through the process of implementation, fidelity, policy analysis, through looking at the leadership context, looking at the leadership landscape, looking at the leadership quotient, looking at the summits that must be had, the multiplicity of summits which are necessary not only for the education, but for the development of our people, so that we are deployed within the specific spheres of our influence, so that we are now able to represent with balancing the pendulum. We are representing the subject matter we are the balance to the pendulum. When we show up, the pendulum is balanced. Whatever is out of balance, we bring the pendulum back to order. And so I call you to attention today. I call you to order. I call you to task. I call you to business. I call you to ratifications. I call you to resolutions. I call you to operationalizations. I call you to the table within the global village to know the significance of this day, Global Mental Health Leadership Summit. Why we are called, we are all summit at this table of conversation, so that now we are able to release substance. We must go from summit to substance, and we must move from substance to producing real-time results, so that we are able to help. We are able to bring humanity the changes. We are able to bring the solutions that are necessary, congruent to the times. I know all of us are on here are believers, if not. And so you understand that I'm speaking to the kingdom in you. In Luke 22 and 29, Jesus says, I have given to you, I have conferred upon you a kingdom that my Father has conferred on me. When you look at the etymology of that, it is a place of assignment. It's a place of your personal kingdom that you must rule over. And so in order for you to rule over your personal kingdom, the kingdom of the mind must be oriented. Hence the urgency for this global mental health leadership summit. How are you leading? The manifestation of the proof of your leadership quotient is indicative of the way your mind is oriented. So if you want to know what the mind looks like, look at the quality of leadership being leveraged in the life of the people. Look no further. And so I believe that we are all called to the highest order today from Adonai, King Adonai. Like I always would say, greetings from the home of the divine throne. This is from where we are descending today to disseminate the panaceas, the panacea, to disseminate solutions, to disseminate glory, to disseminate governance, to disseminate righteousness, to disseminate peace and joy in the Holy Spirit. Where who? King Adonai is the chief potentate of these galaxies. He is the CEO of the universe and the global world. That is our king. That is my king, and that is your king. Where we come in is where we are now charged with the responsibility of exporting the treasures of the kingdom to the nations of the world. This morning I was talking to Dr. Shirley, and I said to her, listen, we have to go into all the world and baptize. The word baptize, baptizo, is the word overwhelm them with an initiative, overwhelm them with a solution, overwhelm them with something that when it hits them at a strong velocity, altitude and impact, they must not be able, they will take one breath and will not be able to exhale. And before they know it, they will be inhaling the infusion of your glory and government that you have brought into the atmosphere. And so, Dr. Shirley, I turn this over to you. And I don't know if there are questions and answers, but thanks to all of you who have been on today. And this is a momentous day. This is a day that not only is it momentous, but I believe that it is a historical day. And we are going from progress to progress, sustainability to sustainability, within the context of Global Mental Health Leadership Summit and this whole day that has been set aside to highlight these different areas that we need to so urgently address. Dr. Shirley, over to you.
Yes, I had to unmute myself there. I was muted. But I want to thank you so much for your time, for your consideration, for your wanting to speak to us and giving us a call to action. I believe that's what you gave us, a call to action. And as you said, we're moving from the summit to substance, to bringing solutions to those issues that have plagued us historically. It is time, as you said, as you used the analogy or the assessment and treatment plan of Jesus, where he said, repent, and it's time for us to change our minds. It's time for us to to take a transformative look at why we're here and what is our divine purpose for being here. We're not here on our own accord, but we are here. We came as problem solvers. And we have already been prepared for that. So I thank you so much for reminding us of what our responsibilities are in the kingdom. Heaven bless you. And at this time, if you can hang around a little, and here we want to hear a few words from Professor Momo Munchi, is it Mushi, to greet us. Sheila said, no, he's not on. Okay. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you, each and every one of you. But before I do that, does anyone have any questions for Dr. Renville? Are there any questions out there for Dr. Renville before we close out? I'm not seeing any coming up. But I want to thank you again for taking the time out, for coming, for answering the call. And my final thoughts to you today is this. I want you to take this away, that according to the World Health Organization, it is estimated that close to 1 billion people have a mental disorder, and anyone everywhere can be affected. Remember the number, 1 billion people. And that depression is a leading cause of disability worldwide. Globally, about 5% of adults suffer from depression. It is a major contributor to the overall burden of disease. Globally, 1 in 7 10 to 19-year-olds experience a mental disorder, half of which starts by age 17, but most are undetected and untreated. 1 in every 100 deaths is by suicide. It is the 4th leading cause of death by young people aged 15 to 29. COVID-19 has had a serious impact on the mental health of individuals. And when we look at the care gap, I want you to know that despite all of the above, the demand for services and supply remains at a significant difference, a significant deficit. And you wonder why we are being called today, because there's a serious deficit when it comes to demand for services and supply throughout the globe. Few people around the world have access to quality mental health services. Underinvestment in mental health care continues to pose a serious gap in promotion, prevention, and care. That's telling us that mental health is not taken seriously. So the investment in mental health is almost not there. The abuse of human rights, the stigma, discrimination of people with mental health conditions remain widespread in the global village. When we look at economic cost globally, we find out that the loss of productivity due to depression and anxiety, it costs the global community $1 trillion each year. $1 trillion each year. Now, when we look at the investment deficit, and on average, countries spend just about 2% of their health budget. 2%. 2% is not enough, you and I know, to deal with the mental health issues that's facing the global community right now. But the good news, what's the good news? The good news is that the rights of people living with mental health conditions can be protected and promoted through mental health legislation, policy analysis, development of affordable, quality, community-based mental health services, and the involvement of people who has had lived mental health experiences. So let you and I not forget that good governance, as we heard today, and that nothing less matters. Good governance matters. If mental health is not a matter of, mental health must be a matter that requires urgent attention. And like we heard the speaker said before, and we heard Dr. Renville reiterate to us, good governance. We need that to make a change and to bring mental health to the forefront. It is up to us, because mental health is good mental health is the birthright of every individual. Everyone who was born came here. The expectation was that we would have good mental health. And that's not debatable. That cannot be debatable. We have to keep fighting for our birthright, which is good mental health, mental equity for all. Why? Because God did not give us the spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. You and I and everyone, everywhere needs to have a sound mind. So we're fighting for that. We're saying to the UN, yes, your goals are commendable, but without the inclusion of mental health, your SDGs and your GDPs will not move. There will not be success, because the prosperity of a nation depends on the integrity of your people's mental health. Mental equity is a human right. So keep on working. Let's be engaged. Let's leave this platform encouraged. Whatever you're doing, know that you are doing it because this is the lane in which you were placed, and we all would have to give an accountability a report for what we did. Don't look at what others are doing and you can't do. What can you do? What can you do with what you have? If each one help one, we're going to make it through. So heaven bless you. Thank you again. And we give thanks to our Father for giving us the sagacity and the wherewithal to be on this platform, to fight the fight of good faith, because indeed, as Maria said, we are our brother's keeper. Bless you and thank you for attending.